All right, so good morning and welcome to the iPad Tell Your Story STI for 2020. Chris, hopefully we'll have a good time. We're gonna do a little housekeeping first. This is being recorded and then this will be available online at some point afterwards to refer back to it, to work on projects, to refer back to it if you have to step away for any purpose. It is technically a 9 to 3:30 class, but we're not going to spend the entire time on a continuous Zoom. There's going to be a bunch of intervals where I'll send you off for independent work and things like that. I will keep the Zoom open so that way people can jump in and out to sort of ask questions and things of that nature. But we're going to try to sprinkle in, roughly 90 minutes or less of this, and then go do some work and come back like in a half hour, come back in 20 minutes. Different intervals depending on the app, depending on the purpose. Some of these things might just be, jump off for 10 minutes and go take a bunch of pictures and then let's sort of share and talk about the process and things like that. Other things between today and tomorrow might be longer, where it might be like, all right, you have this bigger thing to do, like iMovie or Keynote or something like that. It's going to take you maybe an hour. So that'll be, okay, you can hang up. I'll leave the Zoom open so you could always rejoin the Zoom if you have questions. And then after that hour, we'd come back and we'd sort of share and talk about the different experiences and things like that. Cool. Awesome. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and show you my blog. So those of you who've taken a course with me before know that I have this blog. It's blogs.scarsdaleschools.org/HeathcoteTech. And I put everything I do here. So there's general coursework with kids, there's general tutorials, things of that nature. There's also this STI menu across the top. And if you click on this, there's an iPad menu, and I've created a page specifically for this class. So it has an agenda, an area for projects, which we'll get to later. The agenda is sort of a rough outline. We'll take a look at that in a second. But I've also got some resources. So for instance, one of the things the elementary tech team did a couple of years ago to present at a board meeting was we created this periodic table of apps, sort of the core services that we use in the elementary school. They're not all iPad apps, but most of them have iPad functions. There's a little gap in the middle of it because unfortunately apps come and go based on whether the app developer stops making them or they don't update to the new version, or the most recent is a privacy policy issue. New York State has instituted new privacy policy guidelines that are very strict and stringent, which is good, nothing wrong with it. Some vendors, however, have decided that it's on their end, it's too difficult and cumbersome to meet the requirements of those guidelines. So they've essentially said students aren't allowed to use them anymore, or they're not willing to sign the privacy policy or make the change. The biggest one of note, unfortunately, is Adobe. So the Adobe Spark suite, which I know has been used fairly extensively at the elementary school and even at the middle school, we cannot use Adobe Spark video or Adobe Spark post or Adobe Spark page anymore, which is unfortunate. That's why there's that gap in the middle of this periodic table, is we have to sort of rearrange it. At the same time, we're also looking for other apps to kind of fill that. This periodic table is not the end all be all of iPad apps because some of them are not on the iPad, but this is at least give you a sense of the types of things that are out there, organized by purpose. So at least that way, after this course, if you're kind of doing your own investigating, your own research, hopefully it'll kind of guide your thinking about where an app might fit in your own workflow. I also have a tutorial right here about using your iPad as a document camera, because especially with e-learning, that was a big deal, was being able to have a document camera. Now, it says iOS because technically you can use your iPhone, you can use an iPod Touch. You don't need just an iPad for it. But since this is an iPad course, I figured I would add this. And it's an easy way to solve the problem of, if you're at home, not having a document camera. We are hoping in Scarsdale to provide every teacher with a document camera, the same model document camera across the board. But issues of COVID and coronavirus and things like that, the supply chain, the manufacturing of these things, the shipping of these things has been delayed. So we've placed in order. We're not entirely sure when it's supposed to show up. So one of the things we're going to go over are some basic things like using your iPad as a document camera in case we're in a situation where you're in your classroom and you don't have a document camera, or you're at home and because maybe you're a virtual teacher, maybe we get shut down for a brief period of time before the devices come in. So this course is going to be a little bit about using the apps to tell stories, but also kind of using the device to facilitate your story of teaching, like your class's story of instruction in these uncertain times. And then further down, session recordings. So once these are done, we'll see how it goes in terms of breaking it up, but most likely it's going to be 2 big videos, one for each day. But since I'll be pausing it during the independent work breaks, they will hopefully not be 6-hour straight Zooms. If we end up doing a lot of Q&A and whatnot, I might cut them up into different sections. So there may be more than 2. We'll sort of see how it goes. But the blog is a big deal. We'll take a look at the agenda, and it's a big deal just in the sense of everything's going to be right there. So this is the description, kind of just this overview of what we're going to do. We're going to be flexible. Like if it's great that we have a small group, so like we're going to cover some basics, but then we can always deviate. And I'm a huge fan of tangents. And those of you who've taken my classes in person before know I can like ramble and deviate, which I'm totally down with because this is about you guys. So I'm happy to do different stuff, you know, or if things come up, if different ideas come up, I'm happy to deviate, but it's sort of just a rough guideline of what we're going to do. And we're going to kind of mix and match and stuff like that. Cool. Any questions so far? No, everyone good? All right, let's do a quick round of introductions just so I can get a sense of not only who you are, but what level you teach and district. So to see, because I think sometimes, you know, a lot of times I'll have Edgemont folks on or whatnot. So Jen, do you want to start?
Jen Chung, 2nd grade, Quaker Ridge.
Cool. Nancy?
Nancy Collins, 8th grade at the middle school in Butler House, social studies.
Cool. Sarah?
Baron Edgewood Kindergarten.
Cool. Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Rosenset, Green Acres Art.
Cool. Janie?
Janie Fitzgerald, 8th grade, English, Butler House. I'm actually Nancy's teammate.
Sweet. Awesome. That's great, because then you guys, a lot of the stuff we'll do, you guys will be able to kind of integrate. So, you know, to be like one assignment for both of you or however you guys, you know, sort of work it. Christine?
Christine Boyer, 4th grade, Heathcote.
Cool. So let's go with some of the basics. What I'm going to do is just jump back to here for a second. And this is my iPad that you, or actually I have to share my screen first. So hold on one second. Let me share my screen again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my iPad. So right now, what I'm doing is I have my iPad connected to my laptop and I'm mirroring it. So essentially you're seeing literally what's on my iPad screen, and I can swipe over. We'll get to in a minute, we'll sort of backtrack and we'll get to the how did I do this, because that kind of goes to how you can do the document camera and things like that. But just know that it's possible. So I have a bunch of apps now. It's great that middle school is on here because I know one of the apps that you guys have is Notability, which is a great app, and it's great for note-taking organization, but you can actually create and kind of be a little bit creative in it, or at least get feedback, because you can record voice, you can, you know, add elements to it. So it's nice. It's a very flexible whiteboard app. But what I kind of want to do first is just go real basic and low end, because sometimes the quote unquote basic low end things are actually where there's like the most benefit, you know, where things are somewhat obvious, but they're not always obvious to everyone. So simple things like the camera, you know, and this is where the document camera aspect comes in, is that you can literally just with the camera plug your iPad in and then show somebody what's on your iPad or what your iPad is seeing. So that'll be a little bit matrixy, right? Okay. So I'm not going to do that anymore, but to prove a point. One thing you'll notice about this is because I'm mirroring the iPad, I see the controls and you guys see the controls. Like along the right-hand side, you see the camera, the shutter button, and the different options. That's going to happen. There's no way around that. So I know last year during the COVID closure, some teachers said, how do I get rid of those buttons when I'm displaying for the kids? Unfortunately, you can't. That's one of those things you sort of have to deal with if we're dealing with using an app that's not necessarily designed for its purpose. We kind of have to tolerate some of these little hinks on the side. So now you take the picture. Awesome, right? Fairly simple. Video. Now, one thing I always bring up to kids, and this runs the kindergarten through 8th grade gamut, is oftentimes people will forget what version of the camera they're on because the icons are very similar. So if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, you're in slow-mo.
Right, exactly. So now the thing is, if we started slow-mo, you do see that little slow-mo in the bottom right-hand corner, and it's highlighted. But again.
So right now, I just see your keyboard.
Oh, are you not seeing on the right-hand side of the screen the controls?
I'm seeing your laptop keyboard right now.
No, but the red button for the
red
video.
button. The red button in the video.
You know what? I think I have, because I have the, you got it. Sorry, we were all blocking it.
Oh, all right. I always forget about Zoom. You got to move the people over.
Exactly.
The people are always blocking stuff. But so now you see the red button on the right-hand side? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So the red button, and this is great, especially for kindergarten, to kind of remind them, get them used to doing it. But definitely it scales to 8th grade, because I'm sure we've all had 8th graders or older kids go oh, I don't know why I shot a video. I meant to take a photo. It's right, because you probably just weren't. People move so fast that they just click the buttons. Slow-mo is red, but if you ever look on your iPad, there's actually the white circle around it isn't a full circle. It's got little hashes in it, kind of. Because the video one is actually red, but it's a solid, thick white circle around it. And this is good for the younger kids because they may not be able to read the word that's there, like video or slow-mo. But if they're looking at the type of icon, the icons are similar in terms of slow-mo is video, so that's why it has a similar look, but that there's subtlety to the actual image. So I always like to teach the kids not just about the text of it, but actually what the icon looks like and represents, because often that's what they'll refer to or default to in terms of trying to figure something out. And then, whoops, it went the wrong way. So photo is the solid circle. This is the common one. Square is the same, but it changes the perspective. And this is sort of a square photo. Now, this is akin to changing the orientation of your iPad to kind of like the Instagram style. It's sort of in that vein. I generally recommend don't use square. When you're taking a photo, always hold the device in landscape, right? So sideways. Think about your TV on your fireplace. There's always the joke I use is your TV on your fireplace isn't vertical, right? Or above your fireplace, it's horizontal. So think about that when you're taking photos, because you can always cut out pieces on the side. You can't add pieces to the side. And that's why square ends up taking away a little bit of that image from the side. But if I only want this middle part, I'll show you in a second how we can crop and edit those out. So that way you start with the large field of view and you can minimize. But if you start with a small field of view like this, you can't add to the image on the side. Then the panoramic is interesting because the panoramic only allows, you notice it's the same circle, the same white circle, but it has this bar in between. But panoramics only work in portrait. So holding it up like this, that is the only way that it works. You cannot do it on its side. So that's one of those subtleties that if you are doing a panoramic, or if there's a reason to do a panoramic, to really explain and get across to the kids that while you should be taking photos like, sort of horizontally or videos horizontally with your device, when you do a panoramic, you do have to go vertical. And then if anyone's taken panoramics before, you sort of start on one end and you press the button, and then there's that little arrow, and it'll tell you whether to slow down or speed up. And then when you try to keep the line, the little yellow line, right in the center point of the arrow. And I'm not doing a very good job because I went too fast. And then you look at it, and that's what happens if you go too fast, right? Is it gets a little bit funky. This is good as like let's say we were in quarantine and we were at home. This could be a good sort of simple task of patience and sort of practice. Like, take a panoramic of your street. Doesn't have to be, and this could even be homework, right? This could be one of those things that we go back and we have, the in-person learning, and then they have to go through things at home. It's like, stand on your front steps, take a panorama of the street. And that will then help from kindergarten up, just to get the kids comfortable holding the device, moving the device slowly and consistently, and sort of just developing a little bit of that sort of innate connection to it. Now, you 8th grade teachers, your innate connection to this device is going to be less than the kids, because the kids have actually had it since 6th grade. So hopefully all your uncertainty is going to be, which is fine and totally normal, that there's a little bit of uncertainty of how to use it on your end. Hopefully it's the exact opposite level for them, because they're going into their 3rd year. So hopefully now they are so in tune and so comfortable with it that you could ask them, say, hey, listen, it'll take you 2 minutes. Give me a panoramic of your street. They should be able to do it really quick. And then this could be a simple task that's like, let's practice taking a photo and uploading it to Google Drive or Schoology or wherever you want to do it. Sort of a simple workflow activity to make sure the kids understand how to create content and then turn content in. And it could be as simple as that. And then you can get a sense of, with the panoramic, it's easy to take a picture and upload it. The kid's like, oh, I'm done. Panoramic takes a little bit more patience and sort of dedication to it, makes them kind of slow down and think a little bit to do it well. You can also, and we'll do it in a little bit, is one of the activities I'll show you is you can actually do cool panoramics where you actually have like the same person on both ends. Because if you have 2 people, as you're moving, they stand still in one corner, and as you move it across, they walk behind you, and then they stand in the next corner. So as you get across, you'll see the same person multiple times, which is kind of fun. So there's ways to kind of play around with that. But so what I'm going to do is we'll do some quick editing on this. Now, one downside to the way the iPad mirrors is right now, I tapped on the photo. You guys are seeing like sort of the black photo, but I have now the white bars above it. And in the top right-hand corner, it says, share. It has a little heart. It has the trash can. And what I did was I just took a screenshot. Well, it looks like my iPad stopped. Let me stop sharing for a quick second. Sometimes the iPad does, if you're sharing for a long time, it will get a little bit funky in terms of, like it might get hung up on a particular image or a particular app. And like I said, in a few minutes, we'll actually get to what it looks like and how to do this. But so if I look at this now, so I took this picture, just a screenshot, and you'll see, and you might have to move our heads out of the way. But when I tapped on the photo, when you do it, you'll see this. The people sharing the screen or seeing the mirroring will see what you guys saw a minute ago, which is this photo with the black bars on top. The iPad doesn't mirror every single solitary bit. There are certain menus and stuff that don't get shown when being mirrored. One of them is like that top. Now across the top, obviously there's the trash can. The little box with the arrow is the send to or share. And what that allows you to do is send it to and share it to different apps. And we'll go over that in a minute. The big one though is edit. Because edit is where it's as simple as it sounds. You can actually do a bunch of stuff, which is again, a really simple and easy way to kind of introduce some, getting to know you type activities, some basic understanding of how the kids interact. Like Sarah, you're in kindergarten. taking a picture and doing a simple edit on the picture is an easy way to just get them sort of comfortable with the iPad. So if I come back into here and if I edit this, what'll happen is it takes a minute to load the photo, and I have a bunch of tools on the right and left side. The most useful one and the easiest one, and I've done this with kindergarten, is on the left-hand side, you see the little T square, little 4 square. And if you tap that, it gives you this square around it. And on the right-hand side, you'll see those hash marks. So what we can do is I could tap the corners of this box and I can actually bring it in. So I can crop my photo. And again, this is why you always take the photo horizontally so you get more of the image, because you can always cut out parts of the image, but you can't add content to an image. So there's that. What I can also do is now with those bars on the right, if I wanted to or needed to, I could adjust it. And, you know, if I thought I was taking it even, but I wasn't, again, this is sort of a simple way to kind of just tweak and adjust a picture. I can also use the little sort of octagon thing like that, and I can push it towards me, push it away from me, things of that nature. Same thing with the last one, goes the other direction. So again, these are simple, easy ways to just do some quick changes to a photo to get a sense of how comfortable kids are using the iPad, how much they know about the iPad, things like that. Back to the left-hand side. So I always show the cropping one first, because the cropping one is the one that most people are going to use, because that's the one where they realize their thumb was in it, so they're going to crop out their thumb. Or that's the one where they realize they see a little bit of the mailbox in the left and they didn't want the mailbox. But you can also put filters on it. So like the Instagram style filters are built right in to the camera roll. So again, this is like a simple thing you could do, like even with kindergarten, of like take a picture of your shoe and make it look a different way, you know, do something to it. And again, it's simple buttons and clean. There's not a lot here, so it could be an easy task to get a sense of how easily they can navigate the device. And then the little adjustment, you can, you know, sort of adjust the color and the warmth and the contrast just by sliding this around. And then I can say done. And it'll save that as this new photo. Now to get rid of it, I use the open in arrow, and I can send it to Seesaw. I can send it to Drive. For you middle school folks, there'll be a Schoology button there, so you can do different things. What's cool about like Drive, for instance, is if I tap on Drive, it takes a second to load. It's sort of loading in the background. I could then navigate to the folder I want to put it in. I could also choose an account. So you notice I have a number of accounts on here. I have a couple of my work accounts, and then I have my son's account, because a lot of times I use my children as my test sort of beds for permissions and to see if things have access. So half the time my kids are like, why is there this random folder in my Google Drive? I'm like, oh, I was testing something. I wanted to see if it was work. And instead of using like one of my students and like freaking out a kid I'm not related to, I'm like, all right, let me mess with my own children's accounts, because they go to Quaker Ridge. So I get tab on my name, and then I have this. And if you look in the bottom of this window, you'll see, you might have to move the heads out of the way. So the top of this window has the image name, which is image 1096. That's fine. Bottom has my username, so I know it's going into my drive. But then I can click select folder. And when I select folder, I can then navigate through just as I would normally. And if I wanted to go to my drive, I could then find the folder I want. You know, I can even search. So I can say, all right, I know I have an STI folder. It'll take a little bit to load, but I can come through here and there's my STI folder. So I can navigate my way through. Now this is useful, the upper grades, right? Like 3 through 8, let's say, because maybe you're working on something that's in a shared folder or it's in a shared drive or something like that. They can navigate and drop this picture exactly where they want it. So iPad Storytelling, and then August 2020. So this is the folder where I have the agenda and our apps and projects thing. So now I can actually save it there. And then you'll notice before it doesn't save it instantly, it now tells me at the bottom, and this is a good thing because this is like one of those purposeful things, getting the kids to kind of slow down and be thoughtful and purposeful about where it's going to go. Like you have to walk them through this and sort of teach them and model it, but say, listen, make sure it says your name at the bottom. Make sure it says, you know, the class folder or the subject folder. Then once it does, in the top right, you click upload. And it'll take a minute to upload. And now it's in my drive. Cool. Any questions about that? Oh, good. All right. So now I'm going to go back to edit. I'm going to show you another fun thing. Actually, no, I won't do that. I'm going to do this first. As much as I don't generally like to do this. So I'm going to go back to photo. And on the right-hand side, one of the options is a little camera. Right now, it's kind of by my A key on my keyboard. It's you switch it around. So I took a selfie because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an app where we can actually like pixelate out a face. One thing that's a little bit weird, and you'll find especially with the younger kids, but it does track for the older kids, is the iPad is a weird thing because especially if they're taking pictures of themselves, naturally you want to look straight ahead and you want to look at the center, but the camera is actually off to the left. So if you're doing, let's say, a portraiture thing for art, you need to say, listen, you need to make sure you're not looking directly at the iPad. You need to be looking at the camera. You need to find that like home button and then look to the opposite corner of the iPad because that's where the camera is. Same thing when the kids are filming each other. So like one thing, and I'll jump back to that in a second, is like when I hold this iPad up, like the camera's up here. And I generally tell people and the kids, I'll teach them like we have these grips. I know the middle school ones are a little bit different. But I say you always want to hold it where the camera's at the top because that way you're not accidentally like blocking the camera with your finger while you're holding it. And especially with the little kids, I kind of tell them, I know my virtual background is kind of messing this up, but I kind of put my pinkies like underneath it. And this is sort of a simple thing. Like, so they hold it. So the pinkies are kind of preventing it from falling straight down. Obviously with 5-year-olds, you're going to adjust and tweak and play around. But the real key is that the camera's up here. Because then similar to taking a selfie and looking in the right spot, kids will want to look either straight here or they'll want to look at the person taking the photo. You got to make sure that they are looking in that corner because that's where the lens is. So some of those subtleties of practice were, again, about even framing. So like in art, you know, you could do a thing about, I don't know, you know, if you teach like rule of thirds, you know, I came up in the sort of film and television world before teaching. So everything was about the rule of thirds, you know, and like a screen is cut into thirds and you put different subjects in different places. So that could be a thing where they'll be like, oh yeah, there's something in the third, like it totally looked that way for me. But when they look at the picture, they're like, why is that not really where I thought it was? And it's like, because you were looking like straight ahead as opposed to where the actual camera is. So there's a little bit of a learning curve in understanding like sort of how it takes the picture. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this and show you me. Because one of the other things in edit is those 3 dots in the circle in the top corner. So if you tap on those 3 dots, you have a bunch of options. Now there are other apps that will integrate and other apps that will be involved. Like I have this scanner app because I can scan things. I can edit, I can add. One of the things we'll look at in a little bit is an app called Sketch, which I apparently have to reinstall. There's a markup app, and if you click markup, turns off live photos, and we'll talk more about live photos in a minute because live photos are kind of fun. They're sort of like little GIFs almost. But the nice thing about markup is then you have, you know, like a pen. So you can add text to an image. You can also, you know, draw a circle around things and select things. There's an eraser. You can erase what you've written. And there's different, styles of pen. And you can actually change when you press and hold on them. You can actually change the thickness. You could change the style. You could you change the different. It's just a matter of pressing and holding, and then you get the options for the thin line, the thick line, and then the gradient, how thick or how dark it is. Same thing with the pencil. Different thickness, different gradients. So this is nice because it's a simple app. Markup is built in to the device. So without even worrying about apps that you have on the device, you can do things like take simple photos. You can take simple text added onto it. You can change the colors of things.
Does markup on the iPhone have the same thing?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. It's one of those like buried ones. Like it's one of those sort of like super, like it's there and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we added markup to everyone's device. And then nobody really knows actually how cool it is or how it's like one of those super simple but effective apps, and it's built in. You can minimize things. The little plus button will let you add text, magnifier. What's also cool is you can add a shape, so you can frame people's faces out, change the color of the shape. You can draw an arrow. So it does a fair amount of adjustments to it. Cool.
Chris, how do I add markup to my computer? Can I do that?
Markup is not on the computer. Markup is just an iPad app.
Okay.
So you'd be using it, but it's built in. And then when you say done, now I have this new picture, right? So now I have my new image. So now what we'll do is I'll pause the recording. It's 9:40. One thing I want you to do, one quick, simple task, and we'll jump back on in about, we'll say by 10 o'clock. So like you'll have 20 minutes to kind of do this, but so you can make a couple of them. With just the camera and markup, make like a welcome image for like, let's say your School Wires page or your whatever page, where you have, and doesn't have to be your face. It could be a picture, but then a text box, or you sign your name to it or something. Use those simple tools and make a nice, simple image. And then what we'll do is when we come back, I'll then show you how I mirrored the iPad. And then that way we can practice sharing, but then I'll also give everyone access to a drive so that you can upload them to practice, messing around with transitioning and transferring photos. And then we'll share those out. Cool. All
Quick
right.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when I take I don't know anything about the iPad. So when I take a picture using the iPad, the markup app is already on the iPad?
Yeah, it should be. It should be in, or your iPhone. So, maybe you have an older iPad and it hasn't been updated, so maybe it's not there.
I'm borrowing Edgewood's. I went to school to get the iPad. So maybe...
It should be in there. And
Okay.
those are all updated over the summer. Remember, take a photo. It's in edit.
Okay.
And while you're taking the photo too, like you take a big photo of like in your front yard or something, you can practice cropping it and editing it, but then adding some of that markup to give it more than just the photo.
Right. Okay.
Cool. All right. So I'll pause the recording and we'll do 15 minutes now. So we'll kick back up at 10. Cool. All right. So you guys have been doing some stuff. One thing that has come up during our pause and independent work is some of the limitations of markup. You can't really change the text very much. You can't move the text around a lot. It is what it is. Markup is it's an Apple sort of add-on to their thing. So it's not going to be super robust, but it gives you quick and easy ways to do things and quick and easy ways to sort of facilitate editing a photo, adding a little bit of text to a photo, we did this in like 15 minutes and we're going to share it now. And then that way we can look at everyone's work, but this is sort of an example of what you can do. Middle school is like an icebreaker. Not that I'm a huge fan of icebreakers, but, a get to know you type thing, especially if you guys, depending on the model hybrid day in, day out, whatever, that were there, it's like, hey, listen, you have your iPad, take a quick selfie. And in terms of the upper grades, one way this could be useful in September of 2020 is maybe the kids take a picture of themselves in a mask, you know, and then that way, you know, because we're going to be looking at kids in masks all day, we're not going to be seeing them in sort of a normal way. You know, that could be the thing of like, hey, you're at home, like take a picture of your mask, put something, whatever, favorite activity, thing you're looking forward to this year, whatever it may be. And then that could be a way to sort of say, all right, now I know what everyone looks like. And you can even do that as a teacher. Like you take a picture of yourself in a mask with a little like, hey, welcome to class, whatever. Post that on your teacher page, you know, tweet it out. So then that way the kids see, and you use the same app. Like you just do a simple selfie with a simple bit of markup, and then you know how to assign it to the kids. And then the kids could, I mean, like we did in 15 minutes or less. So that could just be a quick sort of fun, like ease in to the year type of activity, especially with the masks, because the masks, I mean, that's going to be a big thing. Like it's this new part of everyone's identity. So for the kids to be able to see you with a mask and maybe a little fun speech bubble or something around it, have the kids do that as well. It'll sort of help create a little bit of classroom community that we're going to be missing. You know, a lot of those sort of original classroom community activities in terms of like how the room flows and functions or small group work or whatever, like a lot of that's going to be gone. You know, it's going to be very sort of sterile and in rows. So you can use something like the camera and markup to create kind of a fun sense of community in a quick and easy way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, we're going to share this now.
Where are we putting these, Chris? I got so caught up with the new things I just learned with markup.
I'm going to tell you, I haven't told you yet. So it's okay. So one thing at a time, please hold. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you where you're going to put these things. So let me share my screen. And then we'll take a look at everybody's and we'll just sort of talk about it. So this is mine, right? So I made this, and in terms of talking about the text, like you can click on the text. And you notice I misspelled the word test, no period, you know, whatever, no problem. I can edit it. You know, but that's kind of it. Like it's simple, and I can pick it up and if I go back to markup, I can pick it up and I can move it around, you know, but there's not a lot else I can do. And that's fine because that's not what this is for. This is for quick and easy. Other apps that we're going to talk about today and tomorrow do more robust things like filling in the box with, you know, behind the words, making the font bigger, changing font styles, things like that. But
You have
markup is,
limited choices on this for font style, though, on that double A.
yep, it's
So
limited.
that's what I just learned.
Yeah, it's quick and it's easy, and that's the
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
yeah, it's quick and it's easy and it's basic. You know, it's a handful of colors. I mean, they give you that rainbow circle in the bottom right hand corner, so you can kind of choose a different color if you want. But the idea is, and we can change this double A right here. You could change it a little bit, right? You can sort of scale it. But then what happens is you notice the box doesn't scale with it. It's not like other programs where the box will move. Like you sort of have to then play around with like, move that, tap the double A, make it bigger, then maybe move it again, make it bigger, tap the double A. You know, so it's not necessarily something I would say you're going to write a lot of text with, like basic text, basic tweaks, basic, simple. Because you also don't want to go down the rabbit hole of trying to shove a lot of stuff in here and then have it not look the way you envisioned, because this app is only capable of just so much, right? So now I'm done. So this is a test. Hello, it's got the box. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say done again. So I'm essentially saying done to get out of markup, and then it brings me back to the edit. And then I say done again to get me back to the camera roll and like the saved photo. That's why we're pressing done twice, because if you go into edit and make a change like crop, you say done to save it. But if you go into edit and then you use an additional app to make changes like markup, you have to say done to save that markup change and then say done to save the edit change. Cool. Now, I'm going to send it to Drive. So I'm going to tap on Google Drive. It's going to take a second to load Drive. I'm going to tap on Me. Now, in theory, your kids aren't going to have those issues because we're giving them district devices. So there's only going to have one Google account on there. They won't be adding their own personal Google accounts and stuff, but it's possible. And the reason why I leave that up there for people to see is that it's possible that you're using your home device or personal device. So you might have multiple Google accounts listed because the device remembers. Like if you sign into Gmail with 3 accounts, then every other Google instance on the iPad will have those 3 accounts signed in. So that's why it's always important to be aware. And even with kids, even if it's a district device and it's only theirs, I always like to make sure they're understanding and seeing what they're doing and knowing what's there and like why that menu pops up. Because that'll help them down the line as they get older to like when they eventually do get to a point where they're actually really navigating between 2 different apps or 2 different users, to pay attention to those simple sort of subtleties of like, which account am I loading it into? So I'm going to select my folder and I'm going to go to my Drive. Now I made a folder called STI 5437 practice, excuse me, practice files. Now I've shared this folder with you. So I'm going to click save here. And then I'm going to click upload. So now this file is now in Google Drive. So if I come out of this, and then I'll walk you guys back through doing this. So if I come out of this, and if I go to my Drive app, and I load Drive, I can search for my STI. There's my practice file folder. And you'll see my images in there. That's the one I just uploaded. The nice thing about this, especially with Drive as a conduit, is that like when it uploads to Drive, it's in Drive, like it's instant, like it's there. It's just like you dragging it from your desktop. Now we use Drive sort of 2nd through 5th at the elementary. K1, 2 is more seesaw, because usually we start doing Drive with 2nd grade, like at the end of the year. So we'll go back through some of the seesaw stuff. And then Schoology is sort of how you're navigating and dealing with that submission at the middle school. One thing you guys want to play around with at the middle school, and it's good that there's 2 of you on this who are on the same team, is you can sort of practice like uploading it and then making sure the other one can see it and things like that, and kind of playing around with that workflow that the kids would have. Now, before I show you guys how to get here for yourselves, it's called Image 1097. That's just what the iPad names it. I'm a fan of always teaching kids to like name it something so they'll remember what it is. It's always important to have a folder to put stuff into so it's organized. So they're not saying, I don't know where that thing is. I don't know where that project is I made. I don't know what happened to it. No, put it somewhere. So if you're using Google Drive, make a folder, tell them to make a folder as part of the assignment, make a folder called, 8th grade social studies, research assignment or something. And then like they know that all the content they're creating for that project goes in that folder. What you could also do is you could tap on the 3 dots next to that file and you get the big menu, just like you would control clicking on a computer or alt clicking on a Chromebook. You get that menu with share and delete, make a copy, all that stuff. But there is also rename. It's right in the middle. It's got a little pencil next to it. You click rename, and now I can call this, my selfie markup. That way they know, or what it is, and because if kids are taking a bunch of pictures for an assignment or a project, they may then complain that they can't find stuff, or I couldn't turn it in because I didn't know what it was. So build the expectation into the project or the assignment that they should be making a place for it, whether it's a folder or whether it's, a notebook and Notability or something. And then name things. Like you take a picture, you upload it to Drive, then name that picture in Drive so you know what it is. Basically building that sense for them that it's, even though it's the iPad, they're not just dumping stuff in this bucket, because then you can't find it. Like get kids used to like calling things something with purpose so that they can find it later. So I'll click rename. So there it is, right? So now for you guys, where is this folder? This folder lives in your drive. Now I'm on my iPad and I'm looking in Drive on my iPad. Now, if I click the people at the bottom, I can see the shared stuff and I can see the different things that were shared with me. So you guys will have one of these. So like you'll see somebody shared from my last class. I can, oops, sorry about that. One of the things you have is in this menu, you have add shortcut to drive. What that'll mean is that'll put a shortcut to this folder in your drive. So that way you then can organize where it goes. The related thing is if I come out of this for a second. So if you don't want to do it on an iPad, the other thing you can do whenever anybody shares anything with you is you can always come over to Drive. And if you go to Shared with Me, you can always take something in here. Like if I take Michelle's, or Nicola rather, I can always take this, even though she shared with me, and I'm on my computer right now. You can do this on a Chromebook, a Mac, or a PC. You can just click and hold, and you can drag it over to my drive. Now, I'm not going to drag that just yet because you'll see that there's this little drop-down arrow, and this is just handy to know because sometimes you may feel as a teacher like, all right, I want to do a little bit of organization off the iPad. You can come over here, and I can decide that I'm going to, scroll down. I'm still in Shared with Me. It's highlighted in blue. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm not clicking on the folders. I'm clicking on these little triangles to open up the folders. So I'm still staying in this Shared with Me view, but then what it's doing is it's allowing me to see these other folders. Then I can decide that I'm going to press and hold, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to drop it on that one. So now it's still in Shared with Me because it's not mine. I don't own it. But if I come over here to my iPad Storytelling now, you'll notice that there's a shortcut to it in there. And the thing is, because I don't own it, but I can organize things that are shared with me in a way that makes sense to me. It doesn't change where it lives for the person. So for you guys, you can drag the folder or add the shortcut from the folder I just shared with you, this practice files. You can add that to your drive. And you can put that in your drive wherever you want. Maybe you make a folder called, actually you probably should, make a folder in Drive called STI 5437, just STI 5437. Then take this practice files folder that I shared with you and move it inside of that folder, and then add the picture you just made to that practice files folder. Cool. And then I'll wait. I'll give everyone a minute to do that.
It's not letting me do it from the iPad.
Did you went into the Shared with Me on the iPad?
So I made a folder. I called it STI 5437. I clicked on the picture. I clicked on my 3 dots. I don't know.
So on the iPad app, you made a folder, right? So, and what I'll do is, let me show you this again. I'll share this again. And this is cool. This is why we do this. Let me.
And I logged in to my iPad because I wasn't logged in before.
So I'm on my iPad right now. And like, if I'm looking at my drive like this, down at the bottom, I see the 2 people, the little share icon. See that where it says share?
I don't have any of that.
And you're in the Drive app on your iPad?
And signed into my account.
See if it's on or you might have an older version. Top left-hand corner, the 3 lines. If you click on that, it might be listed up there. Now, from a student standpoint, this is good to know that you may have issues in terms of version differences with your personal devices, but the students won't. The students will all be on the same device. And if you have a school-issued iPad, that will also be on the same platform and the same version. So that will help to mitigate some of the app version or OS version issues. Did you find it, Jen?
No, so this is all I have. And then when I click to my drive, I don't have any of,
Oh, okay, because you're in the camera roll right now. So
so we can't do it from the camera.
No, so before you do it from the camera roll, what you do is open up the Drive app on the iPad.
Oh, on the actual iPad.
On the iPad, open up the Drive app. Then you can go into that folder, or then you can go to the shared and you can add the shortcut to the practice files folder to that folder, and then you'll be able to move it from the camera roll. And this is good to go through too, because it shows you guys like the workflow for some of this stuff. If you're going to be doing things like having the kids share to a shared folder, have that stuff set up first.
So they need to be signed into their drive on the iPads.
Mm-hmm. And they will be.
Okay.
Now you're teaching second grade, so they may not be signed into Drive right away because they've never used Drive. Second grade is sort of when we open it up to them. You're going to be doing a little bit more seesaw related stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously we'll see how the year goes, see how the kids handle the work and things like that. And then, things may change.
Are we looking at Seesaw in this class as well?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. We will definitely do some Seesaw. Seesaw is definitely more K1, 2, just like Notability is more 6, 7, 8, but I'm going to kind of give everyone an example of everything. The Drive stuff too is because teachers have it, as well as like 3rd through 8th. So that way some of the stuff kind of, is grade specific, but some of the stuff definitely crosses over and is just good general use knowledge and things like that. So we're doing a bunch of stuff.
Awesome.
Cool. Now, Christine, I see you dropped the photo in. Can you change the name of it now on your iPad?
I did it. I wrote CB Garden Projects.
Okay,
Did it not change?
It did not change. Let me see.
Okay, I'll try again. I'm just having a charging issue here.
Oh, no, it worked. It worked. I just had to refresh.
Okay, good. The outlet where I had my iPad plugged in overnight apparently didn't work, and I didn't know that. So I
Nice.
just had to plug it in now. I didn't realize I just learned about the arrow.
The arrow out of the box arrow?
Well, that you can make it the curve. That's why I was so excited, because I've used markup before, but
Yeah, the little dot in the middle.
right,
Yeah.
right. That was cool.
Yep.
That was my big learning.
Good. And it's only 10:18 and you've already got something. So
And I made a whole list of garden projects.
there you go.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
No problem.
So I went to my image and then moved to, and then I'm looking for shared drives, right?
No. So this is the quirk and this is the hint about it. Before you can move it to the file, to the folder that I shared with you, before you can move it from then this is one of those limitations of things. Like the camera roll will allow you to send it to Drive, but it won't allow you to mess with shared folders. So because I shared a folder with you, you have to open up the Drive app by itself.
Okay.
When the Drive app is open and shared with me, you'll see the folder I shared with you, and the 3 dots, you can click Add Shortcut to My Drive. You add a shortcut to your folder in Drive. Then when you're in the camera roll, you can do it.
Okay, so I'm in my drive, and then I'm searching for.
So first of all, in your Drive, did you make a folder called STI 5437?
I made it a bunch of. I don't know where they are. I'll look in my drive. STI.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'm not.
That's fine. That's why we're doing this. This is, and part of the good thing about this and these issues is that like when your kids have these issues, you'll sort of understand and remember the little pitfalls and the little spots of issue.
When you add the shortcut, which one do you press? My Drive, shared with me, or stored?
My Drive. You're going to add the shortcut in My Drive, and then you can actually navigate over. So you can say My Drive, and then you can like, there's a little arrow, so then you can like go into the folder you just made.
So
add.
I have practice files, STI 5437, and then I have Sarah's.
Right. So now, so she added the picture. Oh, Sarah added a whole folder to that folder. Look at Sarah.
So what should I click on? Practice files, right?
Just the practice files, yeah.
Those
and then,
3 little dots.
Mhm.
And then what?
Add shortcut to My Drive,
Okay.
or add shortcut to Drive.
And then click on My Drive.
Click on My Drive, and then you'll actually see when you click on My Drive, you can then navigate through and you'll see all your folders. So you can actually add the shortcut into your own STI 5437 folder.
Okay.
So that way everyone has a folder that they own called STI 5437. And then inside of that, everyone will have a shortcut to my folder that I shared with you. It's all good. This is why we do this. So you can, this is the point. Because your kids are going to have these same issues. Cool. Now what we'll do is while we're wrapping that up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually share my screen and we'll take a look at that folder. And let's see, let me fall into this one. There we go. So I'll share this. So this is that folder. So now, Sarah, what you did was you created your own folder and you shared the entire folder with me, and you put the entire folder into the practice files folder. Now that's fine. It's not what we wanted, but that's okay because this is part of that process, right? You actually want to go the other direction. So what that means is your folder, this folder that you created, Sarah, is in your drive, right?
Okay.
Because you created it, you're the owner.
Yeah.
What I want you to do is I want you to take this practice files folder and put this folder inside of your folder.
Okay. How do I do that?
So I'll show you, because what I'm going to do is this. So I went into this folder. What I'm going to do is I want her picture to be with everyone else's. So I'm going to press and hold on this, and I'm just going to drag this up.
I don't think that's my picture though.
Playhouse.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't see it on.
Yep, so I'm going to bring it.
My house has an option on yours screen.
This one. This is you.
Oh, maybe because it's not renamed. I don't see it as being renamed, so I can't see the photo.
Yeah, I don't see hers on there either, but I see it on my iPad.
Yeah, it might just take a minute to load, but I'm going to drag this in here and I'm going to put this there. And the reason why I'm doing this is so now what we have is, and I'll even show you what it looks like on the iPad too. So now if I come over, let me switch my sharing to this. So you have this folder, you shared this with us. We didn't need to reshare it with me and then put it in. You didn't need to do that because on the bottom of the Drive app on my iPad, and that's okay, Sarah, there's nothing wrong with that. When I come over to files and I do my search, right? So I have this folder. Now you put your folder in here, but you didn't have to because it should go the other direction, meaning that this folder, your Sarah Nedwick folder, should be living in your drive. Inside of your folder should be the one I shared with you. So you're not taking your folder and sharing with me. You're putting my folder inside of yours and then putting the picture in there. And the way you do that is, oops, let me get out of this, is when you're over here in shared, those 3 dots, and you do add shortcut to drive, When you want to know where the shortcut goes, you tap My Drive, and then you can just keep tapping things. So if I wanted to put it in teaching, I could go teaching, and it's going to load. Let's say I wanted to do it in, first grade. So then this is where you're adding a shortcut to that shared folder. So you're basically taking it from shared with me. It still lives in shared with me, but you're putting a shortcut in your location on Drive to make it easier for you to find. And then you would click add in the bottom. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure yet. So I should go to My Drive.
So you go to Drive on the iPad.
So My Drive looks like this, right? These are all my folders.
So in the bottom, you have a thing that says shared, right? With the 2 people.
Yes.
So tap on that.
Okay.
And then you see the folder that I shared with you called practice files.
Yep.
So tap the 3 dots.
Yep.
And do add shortcut to Drive.
Okay.
And then it'll say My Drive, and you tap on My Drive, and then it'll show you all your folders. And then you'll go down and you'll find your STI Sarah Nedwick folder, and you'll tap on that one, and then you'll click the add button.
So now my STI Sarah Nedwick folder, I think I lost it because I moved it.
So then use the search, and this is good because then you can use the search. You could always tap, and this is what's nice about Google, is that for the most part, Google is almost identical between the iPad and the desktop. So all the features, they may look a little bit different, and they may be in a slightly different place, but you can access everything in the iPad version of Drive that you can in the desktop. A couple of exceptions in terms of what you can create is a little bit different, but we'll get to that.
So I find it and then I tap on it.
Tap on it, and then there you see the add button in the bottom right.
Yep.
And then you add. So now you've added a shortcut to my folder inside of your folder where you know yours is organized. And that's a handy way to manage things that are shared with you. Sometimes shared with me gets like super cluttered. Adding those shortcuts to your Drive allows you to then better manage and remember where things are located.
And then that folder now should be in with my other folders.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, did I lose
The practice files folder should now be inside that Sarah Nedwick folder.
And how do you get the picture in the shortcut?
So then what you do is then when you go to the camera roll and you do the like open in, it's going to appear as a folder in Drive. You just have to navigate to it.
Mine's still not here, Chris. Oh, maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Sometimes it takes a second, but you'll notice like right now on my screen, I'm doing from the camera roll, and you'll notice I can see the shortcut file. See how it's like my folder, but if I wanted to add it to that virtual classroom shortcut, I could add it to that virtual classroom shortcut.
But I don't think the folder itself is in my Drive anymore.
The STI Sarah Nedwick one is in your Drive. The one that I shared with you is not in your Drive, but there's a shortcut to it in your Drive.
I think I'm missing a step. I can't figure out how to get it.
I'm having trouble too. I keep failing. It says you failed to add.
All right, no problem. So let's do
From the
this.
camera roll, I can't get it in.
So from the camera roll, and I'll show you one more time that when you go, you've already moved, you have the shortcut already created, right, Jen?
Mm-hmm.
So when I come here and I go to Drive, takes a second to load, tap on my name, I can select the folder, select my Drive. And if I search STI, takes a second. See how one of mine is like my folder and one of them is that other virtual classroom shortcut? It's listed there. See the second one on my screen?
Yeah.
So if I were to tap on that, shortcut, it would actually show me the folder, and then in the bottom right-hand corner it says save here, and then that would save it into that shortcut folder.
Okay.
Oops. Wrong
How do I know that it went?
I will show you.
After I
Let's
hit
take a
upload.
look. So let me reload my drive. I'm not seeing it yet.
Not in there.
So let's do this. Let's pause on this and I'll show you how to mirror your iPad on your computer if you're on a Mac. So then that way, if you guys have the little cords and stuff, we then can see each other's and you can share your iPad screen with mine. And then we can troubleshoot. Fair enough? All right, so what I have is my iPad and I just have like the lightning connector and I have it plugged into my computer, just like normal. What you'd have to do, now this works on a Mac, doesn't work on a PC. Does anyone have a PC? Good, everyone's Mac-based. There is a weird way to get it to work on a PC, but it's not as easy. What you're gonna do is like you plug it in and it's gonna say, you know, do you want to trust this machine? And you probably have to unlock your iPad so that the machine recognizes it. And then it'll say that it's trusting it, you know, it'll ask you to put in your code and you put in your code so it's trusted. Then what you do is, and let me get out of this so I can walk you all the way through it.
I just have to run up and get my cord. Should I just watch and then come back?
Yeah, do that because then I'll give everyone a minute to do it. So share screen. I'm going to share my, sometimes I got to remind myself to share my screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick search for QuickTime. And the QuickTime player is what I want. QuickTime player is a little bit weird because when it opens up, you don't actually see anything, but it's there. You can see it in the top left corner that it's running. What you then do is you file. Now QuickTime's cool because you can do like a screen recording, like a screencast with it, where you record what's happening on your screen, but you can also do a movie recording. When you do a movie recording, it's going to automatically default to the FaceTime camera because in theory, it figures you're doing a movie of yourself. But right here on the record button, there's this little triangle pointing down. And if you click that triangle, you're going to see other options. So I actually have my personal iPad connected to my laptop. So I'm going to show you something on that in a minute. And I have my Heathcote one. And then these are my Apple TVs, in case anyone's wondering. So what I do is I select my work iPad, and it takes a second. And there's my work iPad. And then it's mirrored. Cool. So let's do this. So let's have Elizabeth, why don't you run up, get your cord. While
Do you have to be recording, or will it just show even if you don't press record?
Yeah, you don't need to record. It'll show without recording.
Okay.
Yeah, which is nice because you don't want to necessarily like
No, I don't have the memory capacity for that on this laptop.
Right. No, it's just, just don't hit the little red button and you'll be fine. It'll show it. So try that now, see if you can get that going.
How do you find QuickTime on your iPad?
No, QuickTime on your laptop.
Oh.
On your laptop, you go to QuickTime. And then you go to File, New Movie Recording.
You said press the down arrow, right?
Mm-hmm. And then change it to whatever the name of your iPad is.
Chris, I'm getting a software update is required to connect Fitzgerald JTA when I plug in.
Okay. So then that is probably is it a work laptop?
Yeah, it's my school laptop and my school iPad.
Yeah, so you probably just need to run iTunes and iTunes update, but even still, once it's plugged in, did it give you that little thing about trusting the device?
No, it didn't. It just said it's just is install. It says, would you like to download and install this update now?
Try it and then see, and then that might kickstart it. So last night I had one of those, and it was like, oh, I'm downloading and installing, and it never really did anything. It just did it, but then everything worked.
Okay.
So Nancy got it to work, I see.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I was super excited.
That's awesome. No problem. Yeah, it's handy. It's really handy because then you have this sort of fallback document camera situation, but then it's also the sort of down and dirty way of demoing for the kids what's on your iPad. Even if you're in the classroom, like you plug your computer into your smart board, you plug your iPad into your computer, and then it's not the most elegant solution, but it's a solution, you know? Sometimes there's issues with AirPlay and things like that. This allows you to
let elegance go this year.
Yes.
100%. And that's where I can sort of show these things. Like, yeah, you may see the little like camera icon on the side, or but like, you know what? Hey, you're mirroring an iPad, and you can do it over a Zoom. So like, who cares if there's rough around the edges? It's elegance isn't our priority this year, but getting it done is, and this sort of gets it done. And
I don't have that option. It's
which
not
option? The
recognizing.
Sometimes it's a little bit funky on the.
Not giving me.
Sometimes what I've noticed that you have to do is, and it depends on like whether iTunes is updated or not, is what you do is you make sure your iPad is unlocked before you plug it in, and then iTunes will pop, and you sort of wait a second, and it'll ask you to trust the machine. And then it's crazy too because
It asked me to do that.
Yeah. And then sometimes it takes a minute. Sometimes I've had to, like if I see my device listed in iTunes, but I don't see it in QuickTime, sometimes I have to quit QuickTime and then just relaunch QuickTime. Because sometimes it just takes, like if I'm too fast opening QuickTime while iTunes is recognizing the iPad, it won't show as an option in QuickTime. So I sort of get it. So I make sure, and when I say see in iTunes, what I mean by that is, when you plug it in, so even though this says, like, see, I even get this message sometimes saying it's connect, but it's obviously connected. And sometimes this just happens, but obviously it's working because you're still seeing my iPad back here, right? And I can do these updates. I'm not going to do this update right now just because I don't want it to screw anything up while we're doing this course. But this is iTunes right here, and you see how it has, I'll do later. See how I actually have my iPad listed here? I've found that sometimes I need to wait 30 seconds for iTunes to recognize the device and have it listed here. And once it's listed here, then it will show up in that QuickTime menu next to the record button. Technology is fast, but sometimes we move a little bit faster than it, which is also sort of good to experience and understand. So that way, when you're trying to walk kids through it, because kids sometimes will go 1,000 miles an hour. And a lot of this is, it's intention. And it's like, all right, slow down and make sure you're doing step A first and then step B. Sort of like with the whole Google Drive thing, and why I kind of had you guys fumble through that a little bit, is to sort of see that it's really, you kind of have to build your setup in Drive first, or maybe Schoology, like you set up your folders or your lesson or whatever it is, you set up that back end sort of solution first. So that way, when you go to send things to it, it's already there and it's already been created, because otherwise it gets a little bit clunky to kind of do on the fly.
You're setting something up in Google Drive. Say I want the kids to make an introductory video about an artifact, right? Tell me about this mug and what it means for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like 8th graders don't want to share that with each other, just with me. Can I have them share to a drive without giving them access to the folders, to the files in the drive?
No, what I would say for that is you tell them, listen, I want you to make a folder for yourself called, 8th grade artifacts. Then I want you to put, whenever I ask you, I'm going to ask you throughout the year to do a bunch of artifact videos, photos, markups, whatever. Share that folder with just me. Then you will have a collection of folders. And what you
Right.
can do is you can make a folder in your drive called like 8th grade artifacts and then add shortcuts. Then every time a kid shares with you, you basically drag it into that folder. So inside of your drive, you have your own folder that has a shortcut to all the kid stuffs. So they can just say, hey, Mrs. Collins, I uploaded the file. You're like, all right, cool, Billy. And you go to Billy's folder and you're like, yeah, I saw it. That was great. That'd probably be the better way to do it. Because then also too, that's a simple way to get them to also practice organization and then understanding about the sharing aspect. And that when they are worried about it, you say, well, no, listen, because think about this. Who made that folder? And they're like, well, I did. And you're like, right. Did you share it with anybody? No, I only share it with you. It's like, okay, so then that means and that's why I did it. Because some kids might be like, why don't you just make a folder and share it with us? We drop stuff in there. Like, well, because then what happens? Like, if there's one folder that everyone can see, what happens to everything in it? Then the kids will start being like, oh, wait, everyone can see it, and someone might delete something. It's like, right. Not saying you're going to do it on purpose or do it to be mean, but sometimes things happen. The easiest way to do it is kids make a folder. And that's a great thing is like you might have ongoing artifacts. They make the folder in September, and that could be one of those first sort of homework asynchronous assignments. Make this folder, share it with me. Put up your first artifact, and it could be a picture with the markup about why. And then ongoing, you can say every time we're going to do an artifact assignment, you're going to put it in that folder you've already shared with me, so you don't need to share anymore because I already have it. And then if you wanted to, you could say between English and social studies, if it was like the same, if you guys were sharing that project or those kids, you could say to them, listen, this is a dual content area assignment. So share it with the two of us. So it's going to be, you're going to own it and you're going to share it with two teachers. So then that way the two of us can see the assignments ongoing.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Do that. Cool. Now, are people connected with QuickTime?
No.
All right.
I've connected with QuickTime many times in the past with my iPad, and today it will not recognize my iPad.
But at least I know how to do it.
I've done this before, and now it seemed like first iTunes hijacked my computer, and then when I got iTunes to, stop popping up, now QuickTime won't connect. It won't recognize.
We'll come back to you in a minute. Let's do this. So Jen, why don't you share your screen with us, Jen, and share now when the Zoom thing pops up, and just so everyone knows, like when the Zoom thing pops up, you can share like just a certain app or window. Sometimes with students, you might want to share your desktop. Just be aware of what's there, because in that way you can swap between the different apps. So cool. Look at you. So you're in here. So,
Sorry.
That's okay. There's your foot. Awesome. Welcome to second grade. Have a great day. Very good. So tap on Google Drive. Tap your account. Select a folder. My Drive. So do a search for STI. So there it is, 54 practice files. So tap on the practice files. That first one up there, tap it. And then practice files, and then click save here. And then click upload. And there it goes. Now what you can do is now get out of this and go to Drive. Go to your Drive app on your iPad. Go to your Drive app on your iPad.
Hungry too. Can you sit here with that?
And then across the top, you can do a search for STI.
Is my computer making that noise?
And then you can tap on that, and then you'll see the one that you just uploaded, 61. So tap the three little dots next to it to the right-hand side, and you can rename it right in the middle. And call it whatever you want to call it. Cool. And there it is, right? And then in theory, you have those other two up there. You could, because you actually had done it successfully twice before, you just didn't realize it, you can actually delete those. So you can click remove and remove it from that folder. Now, it is theoretically...
Chris, I'm sorry.
No,
Why
go
do
ahead.
our iPads think it's Tuesday, January 9th? Mine does too.
Huh. Yeah, no, I'm looking. Mine does too. That's weird. I don't know.
Okay, just curious.
So we are moving on the back end over from one iPad management system to another. It could just be that, and that we haven't gone through and fully set all the stuff. I think January 9th was originally like a default date on all iPads. Apple originally had, it may not be the 9th, but there was originally, like in all the original marketing material, there's always the same date and time on all like the calendars and stuff, and that there's like a significance to that, which is why it's always there. But yeah, that's good though that you mentioned that. I will I've been talking with the guys in AV about this new setup, and I have access to it, so I'll take a look when I'm in there.
I think that's my computer.
So then, so cool. So Jen, you're good. Anyone else have issues with saving to the folder, or did everyone solve that? Elizabeth?
I have, it says extracting software. I guess when I hooked up my iPad to the computer,
Mm-hmm.
it says it's preparing to update the software on this iPad. So I just have a little bit more, and
It's fine.
it'll work then.
Yeah. Cool. So while that's cranking, what we'll do is we will take a quick look at the things you guys submitted. So I'm going.
Question about QuickTime. When
Go
you're-
for it. Yeah, we'll do that now. What's up?
Okay, so I'm trying to connect. I can't open QuickTime for some reason. Let's see. So I do new movie recording.
New
Right?
movie recording. Yep.
And then for some reason, it says my camera, my only choice is FaceTime HD. Oh, here it goes. Oh no, keeps popping in and out from, I think I have to click on ED second grade,
Yes.
but it doesn't say as an option.
Why don't you share your screen and we'll take a look. And share the whole desktop. That would.
Oh, I see. Share screen.
Yeah, and share the desktop. So then
Do you
let's
see
take
it,
a
or-
look. Yeah, I see it. So click the little triangle next to the red.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not there. Because see how it says camera, it says FaceTime HD. It should say, no,
See
you
how
know
it
what?
comes in the
Yeah, so let's minimize
I
this. Yep. Minimize this and let's take a look at, well, that's distracting.
That's amazing.
You're like stuck. That's funny. We're gonna stop you sharing for a second.
Okay.
So it kind of got hung up on the minimization. So in iTunes, is iTunes popped up on your dock?
Okay, it is now.
Then in iTunes, do you see the ED second grade listed as a connected device?
I'm on iTunes on my computer. Is that okay? Or should it be on?
No, you should be, because what you should be looking for, and I'll share mine real fast, is when you're looking in iTunes, like this is my iTunes window right here.
Yeah.
See how on the left it says devices and it shows that my HE iPad is connected?
I don't have a device option. It just says library and music playlist.
So try unplugging your iPad and plugging it back in. Sometimes that happens because, like I said, sometimes the first time you connect, if it's locked, it has difficulty recognizing. And one of the reasons why I like to go through this in classes like this is to sort of have everyone experience the potential pitfalls, but also like the length of time to resolve. So this is one of those things where if you're doing asynchronous or synchronous live lessons, like let's say we're shut down, or let's say you're teaching virtual or whatever it is, these are the types of things where you want to make sure you give yourself that like 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is ahead of time, to make sure you kind of plug in and have sort of those ducks in a row. So that way, when this happens or when you go live with the kids, you're all set and you're good to go. Or if it doesn't work, you can then pivot and you have an understanding of how you can adapt or adjust.
And how do you unlock your iPad again?
So you just basically wake it up and then it'll ask you for like a code. And then sometimes after a couple of seconds, iTunes will send a thing that says, do you want to trust this computer? And you say trust. And then that does it. In terms of the document camera standpoint, one of the things you're going to want to do is if you use it, you got to practice with like how high to like have it set up and what you like a stack of books or something underneath, you know? So that way it looks good. The other thing is you want to make sure you counterbalance it so it doesn't fall off. So you might have to like gently like stack a book on the other end of the iPad so it doesn't go toppling off your little makeshift stand that you may have at home. I've seen people do things like stacks of books and then like a soup can on like the one end of the iPad because the soup can is heavy enough that it'll counterbalance it so it doesn't fall over. I don't necessarily know if I recommend a soup can like sitting on the glass of an iPad. Maybe like a, you know, War and Peace or something. You know, Britannica soft cover, not the hard cover. Yeah, because
Nobody has encyclopedias anymore, Chris.
I know, which is why I think people were using soup cans because everyone had soup cans and nobody had big heavy books anymore. But it's like, yeah, you be the one to tell your building computer teacher that you broke your iPad screen because you put a can of soup on it. Books are great, you know, stack books, get a big heavy book. I would say the yellow pages, but we all know the yellow pages don't exist anymore either. So big heavy books are no longer a thing.
My iPad, it says it's not connected, even though it is connected. It says iTunes could not back up the iPad, Elizabeth iPad, because the iPad disconnected. So I don't know. I have a document camera. Do you want me to show you through the document camera?
Sure.
Okay.
And sometimes these things happen, and sometimes, especially this time of year, updates are being pushed out and things. Like everyone got the email from Jerry last night, I think it was, about the new filtering and stuff. So some of these issues could be the filtering going through the system, you know, and all the devices getting updated and all that kind of stuff. So these are kind of quirks that you can also work out. Hopefully you kind of make a list of these things. So that way, when you go in that first day in the building, you know, if the computer teacher has office hours or something like that, you can sort of say, hey, can we solve this problem? But at least for most of you, it's solved. I know, Christine, you're having trouble, but I also know you've gotten it to work in the past.
I have, but now I'm trying, and it's because the iTunes is not, the iPad's not connecting to the computer in general. And then iTunes is saying you have to allow or to hit continue to have access to the iPad, which I'm trying. But now I'm saying it's telling me that my C-Boy at Scarsdale School's Apple ID is not recognizable.
Yeah, you can ignore that. You can ignore that. It's usually just about it actually connecting.
Yeah, and that's the part I can't make happen. It's making me crazy. It says to allow access, please respond on your iPad. So I would go to iTunes on the iPad?
Or no, it should be a little pop-up box usually.
Nothing popping up. It's weird. From it not charging last night to all of this, I feel like it's possessed.
Could be.
Maybe that's the easiest answer. I don't know.
Maybe shut it down and power it back up, because sometimes they are possessed.
Yeah, and sometimes it does happen. And like I said, I do know that we are making updates.
The only thing I do have is the right date. Everything else is off, but I have the right date.
So if you have the right date, that might be the issue, because if all the district devices are on a different date, that probably means that your device isn't properly connecting.
Right, and that's what I'm thinking, because last night, I mean, it's been plugged in on and off over the summer, and then last night I plugged it in a place where I normally would to charge it, and that outlet just it's down to 11:15.
Yeah, and that's probably why.
Yeah, it's definitely got issues.
I don't know what to do.
Not me, it's the iPad. I'll shut it down and then start again. See what I can do from there.
My iPad is syncing now with my computer since that update.
All right, now, while we're doing this and waiting for sort of things to update and stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, and I'm just noticing that this app I'm going to show you isn't currently in the district list. It was. Excuse me. It was in the district list, but as we've been updating, things have changed. So what I'm going to do, but I'm going to show this to you anyway, because give me 1 second. So, all right, I'm just submitting a request for this app. So the app that I just requested everyone get, and it's a free app. So if you have like a personal device, you could always put it on that. Let me share. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my personal iPad. Let me get that set up. All right, so Zoom, let's share the screen. All right, so I have this app, and when we have this app is called Sketch. And what's really cool about Sketch is it works just like markup, where it's in that circle with the 3 dots, when you're editing a photo. So if I go to the circle with the 3 dots, so Sketch is that red one. It's made by the people who make Evernote. And it's a great app, and it's a free app. When you tap on it, it does the thing where it opens up again in this secondary location. Now, one of the super nice benefits about Sketch is it makes your photo on this whiteboard. So you could, if you wanted to, and if you look on the right-hand side, bottom corner, there's an arrow. Left-hand side, it's blue. That means if I do something now, it's going to be a blue arrow. So I just drag out, and there's a blue arrow. But what's cool is I move it around. If I pinch and zoom, I can actually bring this in and enlarge the picture or shrink it down. Let's say I do that. Now on that arrow in the bottom corner, I can tap that arrow and I get this list of other options. So the cool one is the one at the top. Well, I think it's cool, but that is the pixelization. So when you choose that, if I tap and drag out over my face, it can pixelate my face. And then what's really nice is you can keep pixelating it. So I could tap and drag out again, and it'll do like a pixelation over the pixelation. So I can do that. So that's fun. So if you're doing photos or something like that, if you want to, not have somebody's face shown, what you can also do is tap these little like stickers. Right, you can stick that over. You can pick it up and move it. Change the direction. You can write something next to it. There's a pencil, which is more like, a little marker. Thicken it up. So Sketch does basically the same stuff that markup does, with that one big exception that it has that pixelization tool, which is really nice. Plus it also has these little like sticker things, which are cool.
So who designed this one, Chris?
Sketch, I think Sketch originally was just some app developer, but then Evernote bought it. So it's sort of part of the Evernote suite of things. What's also cool is like with this, you can actually do you know, boxes to highlight sort of things. You still can't fill. Oops, but I need to clean my iPad screen. You know, but you can overlap. You can change the color. You know, so you have different shapes. Text. You know, so that gives it a little bit more of that like shaded background. And then this one is different. You know how in markup you had to like tap the AA and drag a little slider and make your box bigger. Like you sort of have to do all those things. This sketch is a little bit nicer because you just drag that corner and it just makes it bigger for you. You know, and then you can click the A to get that drop shadow. So it doesn't fill in the box, but it gives it that background shadow. Or you get rid of the A just to have it be straight text. So it's similar to markup. This came first. This app predates markup. So markup kind of is a play on this, I think. And markup just focused on different things. So yeah, there's just different ways to do things. You know, it's like a highlighter. You know, so you can go over and highlight. And then same thing, you say done. And then there's that picture, and then I would say done again. And it's saved to my camera roll. So Sketch is another real nice one that is, like I said, I requested it to be pushed out, you know, for teachers and stuff, or at least be available, and for kids too, because kids could also have fun with it in different ways, you know, with using the stickers and things like that. Those little like perfect stickers or question stickers could be useful too, because like a kid could submit a picture to you and you could drop that question thing on it and sort of like send the picture back to them and be like, I have a question. It's a little bit clunky, but it's doable, right? So that's just another fun app or another useful app, but at least markup is built in, and at least markup comes with the iPad by default. So, you know, you don't have to worry about requesting app updates and stuff. Cool. Yes, Christine, question?
I'm realizing that maybe mine has not been updated at all because I have the right date and I have Sketch.
So yours has probably not been updated.
Right, which is why I'm
which is why it's having trouble.
I think I'm the same, and I was wondering, because I can do all these apps, can I just email?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can play around with those. That's fine. And it's just probably because, yeah, not every app, not every device has been updated. Not every, you know, people had stuff over the summer or whatever. So it's all good. But again, it's about hopefully at least everyone's seeing them and knowing that they're out there and knowing what the possibilities are. Cool.
Yeah,
now, one thing I want to do now is super simple. We're going to kind of take the notion of that photo that we made but kind of expand on it a little bit. And it's taking sort of a little step up in complexity, but also staying super simple, which is using Drive. So, and I know we were playing around a little bit with Drive in terms of management and organization and moving things from the camera roll to Drive. But now what I want to do is we're actually going to create something straight from Drive on the iPad. So let me get my work one going, because Drive on the iPad also gives you some nice options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Drive on my iPad, and I'm going to go into that folder. I'll go to the practice files folder, and I'm going to use the plus button in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, one thing you'll notice is that you can add folders from here, documents. There's also an upload button. So if I clicked upload, I could actually upload photos and videos. So I could go to my camera roll and upload that way if I wanted to as well. That's an option. You can even use the camera, and if you take a picture here, it'll take it straight into Drive. It'll leave it in this folder. One thing about that, because a lot of times kids will be like, well, can I just use that instead? Sure, but you take it directly into Drive, you're not going to get the markup and stuff. Also, then that becomes a little bit more dependent on the internet. So let's say they want to go outside to their backyard and do something. They should really take the photo with the camera, because that's not dependent on the internet, right? For them to use the camera directly to Drive, they got to be on their Wi-Fi or in school Wi-Fi, whatever. I always like to tell people, especially the kids, like, listen, use the app for what it was designed for. Just because Drive can take a photo, don't. It wasn't made as a photo app. Use the camera. Use the iPad's camera to take a picture. Then you could use Drive to upload it or something. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to make a Google slide, and I'll sort of walk you through it. And this will be another one where we kind of play around with this for a few minutes, and I'll let you guys have some independent time. So I'm going to call it so I'm going to create it. Now, it opens up. Now it's not in Drive because I made a new slide. It switched to the Slides app. So depending on whether our heads are in the way or not, but if you look in the top left-hand corner, you'll notice that it says Drive because I'm no longer with the little arrow because I can go back to the Drive app. Drive is a standalone app on the iPad, and Slides and Docs and Sheets are all individual apps. So you could start something, you can create a new one from within Drive, it'll open up Slides. You can have something in Drive, tap on it, it'll open up Slides or Docs or whatever. So the apps operate independently. All the school devices will have Drive and Docs and Slides on it. And then obviously we could add other things. The one app that's not there is Drawing. So if you've used Google Drawing on like a Chromebook, that's not something that exists in the same way on the iPad. So what we're going to do is, so like it gives you the same stuff. So double tap, right? Like on the Chromebook, it'll say double click or click to add title. So they've changed the language a little bit, which is important because then you know that you're not just tapping once, you got to double tap. Right? Then bottom left-hand corner is where you have the add slide button. I point that out specifically because A, you're going to need to add some slides, but also B, it's the exact, it's sort of the opposite place of where it is on the computer. When you're looking at slides on a browser, the little plus button for the slides is in the top left corner. This is in the bottom left. Now it functions the same way. When I tap on it, it will give me the same choices, the same slide layout choices, like title and body, section header, title columns, whatever. I always like to just use title and body because then it allows me, I like to use those boxes as sort of margins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a photo. So I'm going to add the photo and I'm going to say image. Now I could take a picture, meaning I could like take a picture straight in the slides file if I wanted to, or I can upload from photos. And I can upload this one.
Image, Chris?
Hmm?
Sorry, how did you get to image?
Plus in the top right-hand corner.
Oh.
Image. If I wanted to, I could also click the camera. It'll ask me if I want permission. I say okay, and then I could literally take a picture and I can use the photo. So this is an example of using it, taking it directly into the app, and I can use those corners to press and hold and drag them in. Now, if I take the middle, it will stretch it. So you don't want to take the middle. You always want to take the corners of these things. There is an undo button across the top. You'll notice the left arrow and the right arrow. So I can undo it and get it back to normal. The little ball up top, I could spin it. Oops, wrong button. I can move it. Now, once I tap on it and it's selected, I could tap it again. And then I get that menu bar where I have cut, copy, paste, delete. I could send to the back. So what I can do is I can layer things. So just like you can arrange, and on the computer, it's arrange, order, send to back. Same deal. You could arrange and have these things layered like a collage. So I can delete that if I wanted to. One of the nice things about this is when I do this, just like on the computer, if I don't put anything in that title and text box, they won't show up when I go to present it. But if I want to have, like, let's say, a nice border around my screen, my image, I can line this up, but I still get those red lines that show me that I'm lining up to those other elements. And that's why I like using those boxes. Whoops. So I like using those because then I use those as guides, and I'll put that in the center, and I get that vertical. So you still get these elements on the iPad app. So then if I hit the play button at the top and I'm going to present on this device, then what it'll do is it'll show it to me in present mode. So I'll see what it looks like. So I have that sort of like nice white frame around my picture. So a lot of times I like to do that because, especially with the little guys, possibly with middle schoolers too, is they'll kind of stick things kind of haphazardly around the page, and some will look like they're off the page or cut off and things like that. I generally tell people that it's good to have a little bit of a border around these things so that, like, the eye knows you're seeing the entirety of the image or the text. But sometimes if you have, if you, like if you move this up here right to the edge of the slide, sometimes then I feel like especially A, it's not balanced, but also B, it could be like, wait, where's the rest of it? Am I missing something? Is something cut off? So what I like to do is get kids to think about making sure it's clear that, like, the user, excuse me, or the viewer in this case is seeing the entirety of an image. And that's why I like to use those boxes as guidelines, because then at least that way, if I wanted to put something next to it, I know that I'm seeing the whole image, and I know that I'm seeing everything that's supposed to be in there. And then double tap to get out. Now, so if I leave that there, what's also cool is I can add other things. I can add a comment, which is nice. So, like, kids can comment on work, or you could comment on stuff that's shared with you. You can add shapes. Now, this would be where you could add a shape. Every shape is automatically a text box. You just got to double tap on it, and then. So whereas in markup, we couldn't have that text background, what you can do is you could actually take the picture, bring it in, and then put this on top. And now you have a text box with a shaded background on top of your picture. The top right-hand corner, there's a little paint bucket, so I could choose, pink. And I can change that. And I can resize it. And that's where you do that. So whereas markup is sort of quick, down and dirty, like fast, do a quick picture, make a quick markup on it, like do a quick piece of writing, you could use something like slides to be a little bit more thoughtful, and like you take just a straight picture and then put it into slides, and then use those editing tools to put different things on. And you can use shapes, lines. Nice thing about this is that you could also make things be a link, right? So if I click on this picture and I insert the link, I could have this link go to either another slide, so you could actually actively click on the picture and jump around the presentation, or I could have it go to,
So you could use that to make like a Jeopardy scoreboard kind of thing.
100%. Yep, exactly. You could do that. It could even be something simple, like in terms of, like, now if I tap on this, it's going to launch and it's going to redirect me to the website. And then I say done, and I'm right there. So you can, or alternately, what you could do is, in terms of like your kids, to use that artifact example, this is where the student could take a picture of the artifact, but then maybe you say, listen, take a picture, put it in, but then I want you to have like a text box next to it or a shape next to it, explain the artifact, and then link it to where you got that artifact or whatever, right? Like, I love this coffee mug. I got it on Martha's Vineyard. All right, cool. Like, see if you could find the place where that came from and make it a link. And then that way, even if it's like one slide, they could have a one slide image that gives a little bit more information and is a little bit more interactive than markup. Markup, again, is that sort of quick, down and dirty. Let's take a quick picture. Let's do some marking up. And like do something with it. You could use slides as a simple, clean way to add some extra layers. It's not, again, the most elegant, right? But we're not about elegant. We're about sort of getting things done. And the benefit to slides is we're a Google domain, we're a Google school, so everyone has access to it. It's accessible then on both the iPad and a desktop computer. So if a student's at home using their iPad and they want to switch to their home computer, they still have access to this file. It's still the same file. So they can make those changes in different places and it saves to it. They can still share this. You know, they can share the file. They can make it available offline, like share and export, right? So they can share. They could send a copy to somebody. So it still gives you all the flexibility of Google Slides, but it's on the iPad. So Google Slides isn't the most elegant of editing tools or slideshows. We'll talk a little bit about Keynote in a little bit, but Keynote is more self-contained on the device. That's a bit more of a more elegant solution, but it's sort of self-contained. Google Slides is a little bit more, Google Slides is less elegant, but a little bit more flexible in terms of our overall infrastructure. So there's those different options.
So Doug had said that the Apple Suite was going to allow the students to share. Did that not come to fruition?
They can share. It's just not as seamless and as, and maybe it's different. Like my experience with it is like spending so much time in Google, like Google's like faster and like more efficient. Now your guys coming up, like they may be more used to that. Like they may be more in tune to that. Like I was saying, they're going to have a greater sense of comfort with these things than like we would, because we don't necessarily use them in the same construct that they do. But that's why we are going to touch on Keynote to sort of show you the difference. And in theory, they can do all these things. Some of the subtleties are like, I don't think you can have the ability to comment back the same way you can in Slides, like in Drive, you know? So I think it's share and stuff, but some of those kind of nuances that we've become very accustomed to in terms of like, here's a folder, drop this in, I'll leave some comments, make some changes. Some of that is not as accessible.
Gotcha, thanks.
Cool. But so here's what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of time. What I want you to do is on your iPad only, and we're going to borrow the artifact idea. On your iPad only, no cheating, no using your desktop computer. You're going to make a Google slideshow, 5 slides, title slide of some sort, right? About, you know, my artifacts or whatever. 4 artifacts, or I'm sorry, 3 artifacts. And then the last slide is like a credits slide, right? We want to give credit to what we're doing. So that last slide will be who took the, and maybe the credits, and this is just for practices, you know, I took the photo at this beach or whatever, or I bought the mug at this store. But just thinking in the terms of when with the kids, you want the kids to have sort of a, you don't want this thing just to show up. Like there should be some sort of title to like introduce the topic, introduce the piece, the whatever it is. And there should be something at the end that's either a summary, a conclusion, a source reference, something. So that's why I have 5 slides, a title, and then a sources, conclusion, whatever. 3 artifacts, 1 per slide with some explanation. And you can annotate the picture, put in circles, put in arrows to highlight things, have multiple text boxes if you want, stuff like that. It could be about pandemic lockdown. It could be about summer of not going anywhere. I mean, you know, whatever you want it to be. Cool.
Yeah.
Now make this document in that, in your STI folder. Cool. Everyone good? So it is 11:20. So let's say 11:45, so like 25 minutes. Work, you know, shut off the cameras, go stretch, get a drink, whatever. I'll unplug my headphones so I have the speaker. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and stuff. So what I'll do is I'll pause the recording and then we'll loop back and kind of revisit any questions once we start the recording again at 11:45. Cool. Awesome. Go forth and create. All right, so now we're rolling again after the brief practice with Google Slides. So as Jen brought up, there are some things missing from Google Slides on the iPad. It is not the full feature. Like there are certain things like slide backgrounds that don't exist. I mean, it is what it is. It's okay. Like there are ways around it. And then again, it's levels of complexity. And so we're kind of working our way up sort of levels of complexity in terms of, the photos, the basic markup and sketch are a little bit more complex. Google Slides gives you a little bit more complexity. And then what we'll do in a minute after we take a look at people's projects is I'll show you Keynote, and Keynote is much more robust and much more complex. And Keynote from the middle school perspective might be what you guys use because every student has an iPad, every student's familiar with it. It is far more robust. The elementary level, I'm going to say we might not need to go to that level just because in terms of third, fourth, fifth grade, Google Slides, I think, is good enough. From the teacher standpoint, you may use Keynote to create, since you have this device that is now with you. Keynote may give you the ability to make a much more robust presentation. K1, 2, you could play around with it a little bit because it doesn't require them to sign into Drive. So if you wanted them to make a presentation in K1 and 2, they don't have to sign into Drive. They can just use Keynote. So we'll get to Keynote in just a second. But what we'll do is I'll share my screen and I will show, I see that Jen's is in the folder. So we'll take a look at yours first, Jen. And I'm purposely showing this from my computer screen, not my iPad screen, just to really illustrate the point that like it is the same thing. That is one of the really nice things about Google Slides is whether it's the iPad or whether it's the desktop, you create on one and it's in a shared folder. Somebody could be looking at it simultaneously and they don't necessarily know that you created it on an iPad, which is nice because you can do things, you can mix and match devices in that way. So simple thing, nice gradient background under text box, like the speech bubble. Speech bubble is nice. Like this is an area where markup, you can kind of draw like a circle, sort of fake it, but Google Slides will actually give you the speech bubble. So this is where you get a little bit more of that complexity. It makes it just a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner because Google Slides has some of that stuff built in. And then the ability to have multiple pictures on a page. That's something that in markup you can't do. Markup is doing a single image. So when you want to start messing with multiple images and text, that's where something like a Google Slides will come in because it gives you that flexibility to have multiple elements on a page. And there's another one. And then there you go. Now I have a question, Jen.
Wait, with pictures, you can't go to can you get pictures from your Drive or pictures from from Google Photos or do a Google search? It didn't.
Right. So that's a limitation of the iPad. So when you're in the iPad and you're doing let me switch over to this. When you're in here, now you should be seeing my iPad screen too, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the differences is like if I come over here and I click plus, I just have from photos, meaning the camera roll or the camera. You can't bring things in from another place. On the desktop, obviously you could insert an image and you can search the web, you could do Drive, you have more options. So it is a little bit limiting in that way, again, with it. One thing you can do is if I went to, let's say, Chrome, and yeah, Alice Cooper School's Out for Summer. We played that at our car parade for moving up this year. Figured it was only appropriate. So let's just do a search for Scarsdale. So I can come over here now. I'm on my iPad in the Chrome app and I can go to images. let's say this one, I can save the image. So I could save it to the camera roll to then bring it back up. And let's see if I can actually copy the image. Sometimes this works depending on the version. Sometimes I've noticed that depending on how you copy things from one app to another, like for instance, on an iPad lately in Google, and I think it's a Google iPad thing, is if you highlight a website address, it'll let you copy it, but it won't let you paste it like into Safari or Notes. You have to use like the little share box arrow thingy. There you go. So you can copy and paste from Chrome into or Safari or whatever. So you can copy the image and then paste it in. So that's how you would do that. You would want to make sure that when you're doing this, hopefully you're doing, the Creative Commons, fair use things. But that would be the way to do it. Would be you would, press and hold, copy image, and come back over and paste. And then that's how you can get them from the web. You're doing like a web search essentially and just copying it between the two apps. It's not letting you search within the app. Does that make sense, Jen? Is that doable?
Yeah, that's doable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a workaround, and that's the thing is there's some subtleties. So, for like you at like the second grade level, that's where I would say that, you might just be doing it where, like your kids, you might just say, listen, like, and this could be a great way for second grade when you first introduce Google, like when you first get them to sign in, they could do a simple like 3-slide presentation and then literally just like take photos from their camera roll or take pictures directly onto the slide as a nice, easy introduction into the concept of Google, because second graders will have iPads. So this is like an easy way where you sort of think about, all right, like what would I do? But now let me scale it back and know that with like K1 and 2, this is an intro. So it could kind of go in smooth. For you
So is everything going to be like you guys are going to create their folders and everything just like the way it was with
yes,
like the cat folders, the reading, math, and library and all that. Okay.
Yeah, Hapara is still the back end system, K1 or second and above.
Okay.
We're not sure if we're making it for K and 1 yet because K and 1 is going to be more seesaw oriented, really not using Google. Kind of second grade goes a little bit later. In terms of like, middle school or art, like you can use this to scale up, just kind of like as we're doing in this course where it's like start out with the easy picture and markup and then the next project is do a little bit more detail. You can kind of sort of amp that up. So for like an art class, maybe the kids in second grade, once they're up and running on Google, create a slideshow that they use as their personal portfolio. And they add a new slide for every project with a little description and an image. They take a picture of the thing they drew or painted or whatever, little description. And then by the end of the year, they have this like super long thing. And again, it'll be a matter of, especially for like the second graders, getting a sense of how does the school year start? Does everything work well? We get the tech team, get the kids, second graders trained up on Google so that they can log in. So for second grade, the Google Slides aspect might be a little bit more like November, December, January type thing, depending on our ability to kind of get them ramped up and dialed into it, because it is a brand new platform for second grade. K1, 2 is still going to be, or K1 is still going to be, Seesaw core, just because that's a lot easier to contend with. And we will get into Seesaw in a little bit in this course.
Can you, because I use Cami a lot. So are you going to like just show a way to work around that?
Work around Cami? Yeah, that's going to be Notability. And we'll
Okay.
get to that.
All right. Thanks.
Can you just show me, if you don't mind, how Jen did the speech bubble? I can't figure it.
Okay, so yeah, totally. So what we'll do is I'm going to come over here, insert a shape, and then you have all these different shapes, right? But you also have, are you not seeing my iPad?
No.
Oh, please hold. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm on my iPad and I go to the plus And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get just a clean slide. Let me do an image. I'll take a quick picture. Oops. Flip it around. So I'll use the photo. So I do the plus and I go to shapes. Shapes has your obvious bunch of shapes, different whatever, arrows. Arrows in shapes, just because we're here, I'll point it out, are really thick. They're different than arrows in the line. Like I'd always recommend if you're going to use in Google Slides, an arrow, use it from the line tool because it's a thinner one. It's not bulky like this. But then you have
Can you insert text into their shapes, like the arrows?
Yes, you can. That's the difference between the shape arrow and the line arrow. Line arrow is more just like literally drawing attention to something. Shape arrow is so that you can write something inside of the arrow. And then call outs is where you get like your POWs, boom, old school Batman stuff, and you get your banners, and then you have your speech bubbles. So you have two speech bubble options at the bottom. That sort of rectangular one, and then you get the circle one, and then there's also the thought bubble. And when you bring it up, you have not only the blue squares to make it larger, but you also have that little yellow triangle, and that little yellow triangle drags out the bubbles, and it drags it to where it might need to go, and then you can rearrange it. So you could actually put this, you can move this here, and then drag the little yellow box over there, and that's the thought bubble. Just tap on it or double tap, you get the cursor, and you say, right? So there's that shape. And then you can obviously click on it. It's a shape, so you can use your paint bucket. You can change the fill color. You can change the border color. You can change the line width if you want it to be a little bit of a thicker border around it. That'll thicken up the outline and stuff like that. And just while we're in here, I'll mention that with the shapes, when you have certain shapes like this guy, and you have the two little gold things, you can actually change sort of the perspective, and you can tweak the angles and stuff. That's what those little gold dots are. Those gold dots will let you sort of adjust. They don't exist on everyone, but on the ones that have the angles, generally you have either one or two of those little gold dots, and that lets you adjust and tweak the angles for the given shape. And then that circle is just a rotational circle. Cool. Makes sense. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And that's, there's stuff in there, and that's the thing is like there are things in Google Slides that make it totally functional, and there's layers, right? You can stack images and text boxes and arrows and stuff, so you can make something interesting and somewhat dynamic out of it. Is it the most elegant and dynamic thing? No, but it's totally usable. It saves automatically. It's shareable, like in Drive, just like anything else. You can comment on it. So you have a lot of those options, and it's super easy to use. And especially and again, the 8th graders may be different because they are so in tune to their iPads at this point that they may be like, oh yeah, Google Slides isn't enough. Totally fair. A 6th grader who's getting the iPad for the first time may be overwhelmed by Keynote. And the 6th grader may be like, oh, I've got Google Slides. I totally know it. Like, that's my wheelhouse. And then that's where, at least at the middle school level, you might see a bit of a difference in terms of like 6th to 8th grade, is the kids who come in out of elementary with all the Google experience kind of transitioning then to the iPad environment. So for you 8th grade teachers, you'll have to figure out sort of where they are. That's a bit of an assessment. They know where they are. You'll have to kind of get a sense of, are they more Google based or comfortable, or have they migrated to really the Apple environment because they've been living in it for 2 years? So that'll be just sort of the thing. Cool. All right, we'll take a look at Sarah's, even though she's not here, but take a look at hers anyway, because I know she's putting her newborn down for a nap. Oops, this is still Jen. Oh, I know I was gonna ask too, Jen. This picture, is this the one you did in markup? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I did a markup.
Cool. And that's what's nice is like, you know, because it's saved to your camera roll, you can upload from your camera roll. So that's where you can start to mix and match. And that's where you may have that first assignment, simple assignment about the artifact or show me a picture of your house or whatever it is. Simple thing in markup, you then can use later to build upon and have, hey, listen, like you did this cool picture as like a get to know you picture. Now make a Google slideshow, add it and add some more detail around it. You know, give me a text box around it, kind of explaining a little bit more depth about that artifact or about that piece of artwork or something. You know, that first assignment could be take a photo of your piece of art and that's it, and share it with me. Next level is take a photo of the piece of art and mark it up with a little bit of an explanation. Next iteration is take that and give me more detail in something like Google Slides. It's a way to really build and sort of scale up, whether it be difficulty of assignment or grade wise or you know, anything like that. We'll take a look at, oh, actually, now that Christine's is in here, we'll take a look at Christine's first. We'll wait for Sarah to get back from putting the baby to bed. So garden to-do list 2020. Let's take a look. Waiting for it to load.
Selfishly very practical.
Right, and that's fine. It's supposed to be. So this is a good example of the difference between like the line arrow and the shape arrow, because this is a line arrow, so it's nice and thin and it doesn't take up a lot of space. When you use the line arrow, you cannot write inside of it, but it just makes it a thinner, cleaner line, which is, you know, if you're trying to annotate something or draw attention to something, it's probably the better way to go. And the picture, and then this would just be a situation where the feedback I would give would be probably put something in that or put a background on that to make those words pop out a little bit more.
I know, I hate the red on the green.
Right, and then not overlap the items. Because you see how like the blue is kind of cutting between like the letters and stuff. Keep things sort of separate. And one thing you can do, which Jen did, which is really cool, is, and you can do this on the iPad too, is when you click on, oh, that's in markup. Is that, you did that? Right, and that's why. And that's why, like, this would be a situation where I would say, you know what, take that picture, bring it in, and then put your circle on separate, put your arrow on separate, and do this in Google Slides, because then you have more manipulation. You have more flexibility and fine tuning in slides. If the picture, the circle, the arrow, and the text are all different elements, it will give you more flexibility in how you arrange those.
Okay.
There's a link in there, very nice. Nice. Yeah, and see, this is a way where you can take those initial photos and sort of build upon them. And that way, especially if we're hybrid, if we're, you know, locked down, maybe we go in and out of lockdown, who knows? These are ways where you can kind of take each one of those things and interweave them to become larger assignments, or you can kind of loop back to them and say, listen, like, we're going to start out with a simple task just to make sure everyone's on the same page, and then we're going to use a different app to kind of build upon that original simple task. Cool. Did you take those pictures today, Ms. Boyer?
I did just before.
Nice. All right, let's see. Where's look at Nancy's real quick. Just waiting for it to load. Pencil case, nice.
So the part that I was going to do, and then time and ability got in the way, was trying to link each of the pictures to a website. So I put the websites on the 5th page, but could you just show that again? Because
So what I'll do is I'll actually open this up and I'll show it to you from in here.
Okay, cool.
Because then that way, sort of show it to you what it looks like, you know, on the iPad.
Yeah.
So when you do this, so if I come over here and I click on this one,
Yeah.
tap on the picture once, and then you sort of pause and you get that menu at the bottom. You can insert, it says insert link. If you don't see that, you can tap on the picture, and then up at where the plus is at the top, you can click the plus, and if you scroll down, you can do a link.
Okay, and does the link allow you to rename the link, or is it just the URL?
Well, this is making the link into a picture. So like this, like if I did a link right now, it would be turning the picture
text.
into a link, like the
Okay,
whole picture.
got it.
So there's no actual word.
Actual
If
word.
we wanted to do this,
Right.
actually, let's do this. Let's make a, here, I'll do this on yours. I'll make a new one.
Okay.
And then I would say, like, click here. And then you can, oops, select all. So I highlight it, right? Then, oops.
Okay, got it.
Right? I can highlight and then I can drag the little thing, and then I can insert link. And the text would say click. The link would be the movie.
Right. Whatever URL you want.
Whatever URL you want. And then it would look like
Got
that.
it. Okay, cool.
So you can definitely do that.
Okay. But you need to put the text first, and I put the links first. So that was my problem.
Yeah. So you write the text, you highlight it, and then you basically insert the link.
Perfect.
And then you do that. But again, if you wanted to, you could click on the whole picture and insert a link, and then the entire image becomes the link. So there's no text there. Just click the picture and it goes somewhere.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then this is an interesting little aside, the little glasses thing. Do you know what happened with the glasses?
I thought it was going to take on the background of the slide, but obviously not.
Correct. So what happens is there's confusion about transparent backgrounds.
Okay.
So that is technically what a transparent background would look like if you were building the image. What probably happened is somebody took a screenshot of that, in which case you took a picture of the transparent background, rendering it no longer transparent.
Right. Okay.
So like if you had that photo in like Google Drawing, which has that checkerboard transparent background, what you would have to do is when you wanted to use it, you would have to do file, download as, and make it a PNG file.
Okay.
If it's a JPEG, it'll become a white background. A PNG file will retain the transparency.
Okay.
But if you do a screenshot, you basically just then get a picture of the checkerboard.
Got
He
it.
always knows what we do. Always.
I do. Yeah, it's an uncanny ability to know exactly what people are doing wrong. No, it's all good. But that happens a lot because people say, "Oh yeah, I know that the checkerboard is transparent, so it's got to work." It's like, yeah, except screenshot takes away the transparency. Sometimes too, people will just say, "Oh, I have a JPEG, but I'll just change it from .jpeg to .png." That doesn't make it transparent. That just changes the file type. It has to originate with a transparent background and be saved as a PNG file in order to retain the transparent background. Cool. Awesome though. And then we'll take a look at Sarah's. So Sarah's got her playhouse. So she actually added that shape. That's, you can get that sun in the shapes. Same thing with like the hearts and stuff. You can do that. Sweet. This is nice too, because whereas, markup can give you the ability to change fonts, but it's sort of buried and it's in that little teeny tiny box. So it's a little bit harder to work with. Slides gives you a little bit more flexibility and ease of use in terms of manipulating things like fonts and size and styles. Because markup, it's like you got to do the text box, and you got to find that little teeny tiny 2A button, and then that little pop-up box is like this big, and you kind of got to like closely navigate it. Whereas slides makes it a little bit easier. Now this she highlighted. She used the highlighter to highlight the words, so it's different than changing the font color, because the font color is still black, but she used the highlighter tool to put the yellow highlight, literally just like an old school highlighter over top of it. And then there's our class. So awesome. She went with a little bit of a techie font. Nicely done. And then the credits. And again, the credits slide, I bring that up because it should be about getting the kids used to giving some sort of thing at the end, right? If they took a bunch of photos, like giving credit to where they took the photos from, because that's just proper. or, you know, if they did some research, just having like the websites they used or whatever it is, or things like that. Just kind of not just finishing a slideshow or a presentation, just like on the last slide, would have some sort of finality to it to make it really like, you know, the front and back cover of a book or something like that. But sort of getting used to that style. And then it's also a good way, especially for the middle school kids, get them used to knowing they're like, oh yeah, I have to have a bibliography, or I have to cite my sources, or I have to have something. I can't just slap a bunch of information and photos up there. There's got to be something at the end that kind of like wraps it all together and explains where I got this from. So cool. What we'll do now, because it's 12:15, is I will show you briefly Keynote, and then I will give you more time to have lunch and work on a Keynote presentation, because Keynote is a much deeper rabbit hole to get into. But it's a good rabbit hole. It's not a bad rabbit hole. It's a good rabbit hole. So Keynote is Apple's version of PowerPoint, essentially, originally, or Google Slides, right? PowerPoint was the original. Then you had, you know, Google Slides, Apple Keynote. So let me open up Keynote. So not now. When the first time you open up Keynote, it'll give you like a little, like, do you want to see updates and stuff, which is nice. You can always go through and do a little tutorial, a little guide. But I can click the plus button. Now you'll notice Keynote gives you a lot more flash and substance. Like it's a much more robust, elegant app. You know, they have all these different designs and layouts, sometimes based on a purpose, like feature story, meaning their slide layouts are going to be a little bit different than maybe a basic white, because they're going to be trying to mimic like a feature story that has like large images, small text boxes, things like that. And it gives you a sense of the different styles. The ones in minimal, on that minimal bar, are like the original ones. So if anyone's been using Keynote since like the dawn of Keynote on the iPad, the minimal ones are sort of those original ones. But there's a lot more. They have these textured background ones. So there's a little bit more elegance, right? Because we've been using that word a lot today. There's like, this is a situation where you can say, all right, like we're in this weird situation at middle school, maybe let's use this. Now, second grade, K1, 2, maybe not kindergarten so much. Kindergarten could totally use Keynote though, because you don't need to log into it. It's built in, and you can have a similar level of understanding about, you know, adding pictures, adding shapes, adding layers. So I'll choose, I don't know, let's choose feature story. So I'll tap on feature story. It'll take a second to load. Now, again, these live just on the device. In theory, they back up to iCloud, but I'm not quite sure how the district's student iCloud and teacher iCloud does in terms of backing up. So presentation title, now you'll notice it's already looking a little bit different. It has, you know, this particular one, it has got this author and date box automatically in there. So it's like, sometimes those footnote type things will be at the bottom. This one happens to have it at the top. So, you know, we'll call it like my first Keynote. Right. Now, when I go to add, it gives me the layouts just like Google Slides did. And it's also like Google Slides, and that's in the bottom left-hand corner. So there's definitely similarities to this. And this is why, like, whether you're teaching Google Slides or Keynote, it's still like a presentation tool. So it's still good practice for the kids, because they're going to learn certain things about like which slide layout to choose. You know, what do these different buttons mean? Like, what's that plus button in the bottom left mean? Well, Google Slides or Keynote doesn't matter. It means you're adding a new slide. So there's lots of similarities and consistencies to how these apps function. It's just the level at which they function is a little bit different. So, you know, I can go through and I can take a look at my different, like this one, the photo 3 app. And then I'll do, let's do title, bullets, and photo. So I have that. Has these placeholders in there. What's nice about this, and which is a little bit different than Google Slides, is Google Slides, you drop a picture in and then you have to resize it. What this does is if I take a recent, and I'll take this one, it automatically fits it to that layout, that template. So it's sort of like locking it into that size. Now you can use those corners if I felt like it. I can change the size and I can readjust if I felt so inclined. There is in the top left, there's a little circle with the left arrow. That's your undo button. I have my slide titles, my slide bullets, things of that nature. What's nice too is, here, we'll go to like this one, where I can add things. I can also do the plus. Now you'll notice under the plus, you get a lot more options. So I can add a photo or video. Again, it just goes to the albums. So this is, since it's Apple, it's very much pulling from the Apple products, right? It's trying to be contained within the camera roll and things like that. But it's cool because I could actually put in a time-lapse video if I wanted to. You know, so I can drop that in. Can't drop a time-lapse video into a Keynote slide, or I'm sorry, a Google slide from your camera roll. Now you can put like YouTube links in and stuff, but what's cool about this is like if it's on your camera roll, you can use it in Keynote and then you can resize it. So you can like move it around and add a title to it, add a description to it. Again, it's a little bit more robustness because you can now start mixing not just photos and text, but you can start mixing videos. You can also you can record audio, which is nice. So if you want to do a thing where the kids are making something and they want to explain what's on the slide, they can record audio directly onto the slide. That's also something that's not available in Google Slides. So that's different. Camera you can take straight from. Drawing is cool because this lets you draw essentially using the same sort of markup tools directly on the slide. So you can now have sort of markup built into Keynote to let you do those things. Whoops. And that's down there in the bottom left. So you can have that. You can change your color and make it red. Do different shapes. That's just like the paint. It's like a paint splotch. Change the crayon to purple. And it gives you a bit of a different like texture to the word. Same thing with the pencil.
Can you resize what you've written or change the color once if you don't like it?
Yeah, so like I chose the lasso and I clicked on it and then I clicked on that first hello and see how it says resize. I can click resize and then I can, and then once I have that sort of that standard object box around it, which is like the blue lines with the dots, or on Google Slides, it's the squares. I now can move this around. So same thing. I can resize this and I can say, you know what? I want to move this guy over here. And you can also duplicate things. So if you wanted to have multiple things on the page, you can duplicate things. So it gives you those added layers. Then actually I'll stay on this slide and I'll say done. Because it is basically markup, but like better markup, because they know that you're not just marking up an image, you're marking up these potentially other objects. And then when you tap on it, you'll notice it's all like one massive drawing. You can edit the drawing to go back in and re-edit it. There's equations, so if you happen to be doing math, you can actually do, so you can actually insert that and it puts in the actual equation. So it's nice because it's not like Google has a couple of mathematical symbols. This actually lets you make like a full straight up math equation. So this would be an example of like a teacher in K1 or 2 using the iPad to make something for the kids may be better suited making something in Keynote because you can actually add and you can create with these very flexible, versatile equation tools. Then you have these things across the top, right? So I'm in that picture one on the far right. So if I start moving my way left, you have clip art essentially, but like not really bad clip art, but like halfway decent clip art. You know, so you can put a lamp in. And you notice there's geometry, so you have different shapes, but these aren't just flat shapes. These, you can tell, they're three-dimensional shapes. Whereas Google's shapes are sort of one-dimensional objects. These give depth and height and stuff like that. You can do basic ones just like Google, where they're just like sort of the flattened versions. And, if I wanted to put this in, you can use that green to sort of adjust the curvature. Oops, sort of, now my slide's getting a little bit messy. Let me just grab a blank one. So you have, those things you can, like I said, geometry is more of those 3D shapes. Your objects are your clip art type thing. Animals. Nature, trees. So you can create like a whole visual thing. Like you can create a picture with this, that could be a cool art thing. Like make a scene and only use, like, no words, no hand drawing, only use the shapes that they give you to create like a realistic, still life or something. Or, and it could be a way for them to kind of have to like be flexible and sort of figure out like, okay, like what would be the best way? Like if I put this in here, how can I like have this beehive? And it still gives you your lines. They're yellow in Keynote. They're not red. Those sort of guidelines. And you can use the paintbrush to change it up. And you can change the color of these shapes. You can do a border if you felt like it. And you can decide how thick the border is. You can do a shadow. And you can decide, where's the shadow go? Does the shadow, does it go on the bottom? Does it go all around it? Is it a drop shadow? You can also do a reflection. And the reflection does like, like it's looking in water. So you have it, now you see it below, and you can decide to do, at what level it reflects. And you can add text to it and things of that nature. Food. So again, symbols, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, power, like, so tons of stuff, way more than just the sort of simple things, the flat kind of basic things. Now, there's nothing wrong with those in Google. Sometimes the Google Slides is the best because you don't want to overwhelm the kids with all these options. It may be a little bit more difficult, right? Because they have to make choices out of more things. Whereas Google Slides sometimes is great because it's so simple and clean that it's just kind of like get the job done, tell the story, like share information, illustrate the point, and it's quick and it's clean. Keynote is going to look a lot better. It's a lot more detailed, but for some kids that may not work because maybe that's too overwhelming. So again, that's also too about like getting to know the kids a little bit. But there's a million of these. This is why I'm sort of saving this for like the long lunch project. Then you can also do charts and graphs. And you could put in different ones. There's 3D ones. So you can actually, then once you put one of these in, it'll ask you to edit the data. And let me make this guy smaller. So you can edit the data, and then you can go in and you can change the information. You can change the region, the months, and you can basically create your own chart, your own spreadsheet in here. And it'll have that information. And then when they go to play it, they'll be able to like spin that around and see the three-dimensional object of it. And then same thing with the interactive ones. You could play around with them and edit the data, change it. There's more data in there. You can edit the series, so you can change like what the different options are. So again, much more versatile and robust. That's not, doesn't look so good. That's where you got to be careful with those middle buttons, because the middle buttons squish The top buttons keep it in perspective. And then what you can do too is you can change just by clicking out of something, not clicking on any object, the slide layout. You can use the paintbrush and you can change up the master. Like if you wanted a background on all of them, you can just click the slide by itself, and then you can use that paintbrush to change the background color, the slide number, things like that, depending on what you're in. So if I come over here and like, let's say I do title, just write the word title. The paintbrush is now going to give me different choices. That paintbrush is going to give you different options depending on what you've selected. So it's going to let you edit the slide if you're just on the slide. If you're in a text box, it's going to let you edit the text box. If I click on a picture and I use a paintbrush, it's something different. You know, it gives you those different tools. Something like this, edit the mask. The mask means what is it blocking out? Like you see over title, that's kind of the edge of the photo, but the mask is saying we're only showing this much of the photo. So when I replaced it, it fit it right in there. And then I can also like scale it within the mask. You know, then I can even move the picture around within the mask. So it's yeah, go ahead.
One question. So I've done this before where, you know, I've enlarged an image and then I have a hard time getting the original one back. Is there a record of it somewhere? If you just keep pushing back, sometimes it doesn't work.
Then you can delete it and then re-add it because it's on your iPad. Like the original one is in your camera roll.
Okay.
So that would be the easiest solution, is if you end up sort of jacking it up beyond belief, just like start over. What you could also always do too, if you're like, wait, I screwed stuff up and I moved stuff around, but I want it to look like it would be originally, just add this again so that you have the original mask and the original title and text box. And then what you can do is say, all right, let me re-add the photo. So I'm sort of starting from the beginning. But if I really like what I've written here, you can just highlight it and copy it and then paste it in to the new one. You know, so you can kind of remake just that one slide. And then once you're done, you're like, okay, this is the bad one. You know, you press and hold on it until you get this option, and then you can delete this slide. And then you'll see also in here too that there's transitions, and there's also real quick, you can do like tables and things like that. So you can actually have things listed as tables. But under the 3 dots in the circle, you can do transitions and builds, which are animations. You know, build in actions or like float around. Create a path is literally like you can make it fly around in any order you wanted to. Flip, flop, like all this. There's a ton of stuff in here that's not in Google Slides. All right. So now it is not 9:41 on January 9th as I look at my other iPad. So it's 12, we'll call it 12:30. So what I'm going to say is this: on your iPad, you're going to use Keynote. You're going to recreate the same 5-slide presentation you did in Google Slides, but make it better. Meaning, if you looked at that, you're like, oh, I really wish that I had this thing, or I wish that this looked better, use these features of Keynote to try to make it look better. And like Christine, you may take that original photo without the markup, put it in, and then layer the pictures on it to make it more clear. You know, try the animations and the builds. Yeah. So use this, dig around a little bit more in the depth of Keynote, because Keynote is so much more robust. Maybe add a narration to it, you know, talk over the slide. So that way it's not just pictures and text, but maybe you add some more context, because maybe what you do is there's some simple explanation for like, so it's like K12, but you don't know if they'll really process that. So you record your audio over it to sort of go into more detail. Or for middle school, you may have a ton of stuff you want them to focus on. So it's like a picture, you know, it's a historical piece of artwork or something, and you're like, or a historical document. You don't have to then write text explaining them what you want them to do. You have that in there, and then you talk over it and say, here's what I want you to do. Look at this document, look at it like this, you know, read it like this, think about where it fits in. So play around with those extra features of Keynote. And then what we'll do is we'll say this is the working lunch. So we'll meet back. I'll keep this running. If you want to drop off, come back on, whatever. We'll call it 1:35. We'll sort of come back, and then we'll talk about the differences in how we get Keynote out now. And then the sort of different pitfalls of that based on what level you're at, because it's not quite as seamless as Google. Cool. Everyone good? All right. I will pause the recording for the time being, and we will see you back in 1 hour.
Enjoy your life.
All right. So back after diving into Keynote pool, how was it? What do people think about Keynote on the iPad versus slides?
Frustrating. but because we had more time, I did better. But initially, I know slides, when you get so comfortable with something, and then things weren't where I thought they would be. So the searching and the layers, there's so many layers in Keynote, which is gorgeous, but lots of layers.
Yes, that's why it was a couple of minutes for, the markup thing, and then it was a couple more minutes, because that's the thing, the more complex these apps go, the more time you're going to have to put into learning them for yourself or figuring out what they can do. You don't need to do everything, because the kids will discover stuff or the kids will teach you things, but at least you're used to slides, crank that out real fast. Keynote
Right.
might take a little bit longer to finesse it. What else, especially from the middle school teachers who are sort of newer to the...
I like with Keynote how you can record slide by slide incredibly easily. And
Yes.
so I think that that's a great function.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's definitely, Keynote's amazing, and Keynote is super powerful and it's great. And especially for you guys at the middle school, because you're in this self-contained iPad environment. So it's mint because everyone has it. It's the same platform. It's much more integrated. It gets a little bit harder at the elementary level just because we're kind of still using Google as the main backbone, but there's workarounds to that. What about you, Nancy? Oh, the mic's your mic. I know that you just unmuted, but it's there's always something.
While she's unmuting, does Keynote talk with all of our other platforms easily? Can we insert it into what we're using here with
No,
kids?
so after we go through a little Q&A, I'm going to show you sort of some of the hinkiness about getting Keynote off of the device.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. So I thought Keynote was really cool. I love the fact that you can really almost make your own sort of videos just by using that, and the inserting of sound and the ability to manipulate things. But I forgot stupid things like that you can't just add a text box by double clicking.
Right. You have to plus add it. Yeah.
But then if you plus, so I'm on mine. If I go plus, unless it's there, where's text box on there?
Oh, right. Maybe did it move?
I actually don't think it's on the iPad. I think it's only on the Mac.
Maybe. And there used to be a text box feature in Keynote a while ago.
Yeah.
They may have moved it, or may have.
I kept having to redesign master slides to add text.
What you could probably actually do is,
Just copy and paste it from one and add to the other.
or what you do is you put a shape in.
Okay.
Put a flat basic rectangle in.
Right.
That's a text box.
Yeah.
So just like in Google Slides where the shapes are text boxes, they're just they're already filled in. Same thing in Keynote. So in that context, I would say you just drop in the shape and then just change the color of the background or whatever to get it transparent.
The other question I had was I was trying to use photos from my phone. So I threw them over into my Google Drive, but then I couldn't figure out how to get them from Google Drive into Photos.
So you have to save them. So let me make sure I'm dialed in to this. Yeah. So let me share. So just because you mentioned, so this is the shape. We'll just sort of talk the text box thing real fast, which is basically I just added a basic shape, and then you double tap on that basic shape and
Okay.
This is a text box. I probably misspelled it because it's so tiny.
So you guys have these things on your iPads now?
Say again? The
You guys
keyboards?
have the new keyboards on your iPads?
No, we're not, and I'm not sure we're getting them or if we're getting them in time for school. We've never had keyboards on our iPads.
Okay. So this is my first iPad, so it just came like this. But you can use keyboard shortcuts like Control Tab and Delete and all that stuff, or Control Z and Command Z, whatever you call it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome. And then yeah, you can take this and then you can use the paint bucket to like change the font and stuff like that, and then you could you know, mess around with it, you know, in the style. Like you can change the text, you can change the fill, and you can make it, you know, white or whatever you want. So just like Google Slides, just use those basic shapes for it. So in terms of getting a photo from Drive, so let's say I'm in here and I'm in Drive and I want to put one of, you know, I want to put this garden project photo in. So a couple things you can do, right? So what you can do is when you sort of instinctually, you kind of go to those three dots, right? And you see there's all these different things. Now, there is this open in that doesn't necessarily work the way you want it to work in all instances.
Photos as an option for me.
Right. Right. So that's the thing. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it can open in like Instagram or whatever. And it sort of like starts its own thing, but it's not necessarily what you want, right? What you can do is you press and hold on the picture. And if you press and hold on the picture,
that's ridiculous. So easy.
Right. But that's why, like, you don't think about it because there's that three dot menu with the like open in thing, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna open it in Photos.
Right.
Press and hold, save to camera roll.
Well, I wasted 5 minutes of my life because I took screenshots of them and then edited it.
Yeah, no, yeah, you don't need to take screenshots ever, almost ever. That's not true. There are occasional ways, there are occasional instances where you need to take screenshots of things where you can't save stuff. Like if you wanted to, like, you know, get an image that was tweeted or something, you'd have to take a screenshot of that because Twitter won't let you save on the computer or the iPad or whatever. But generally, for like apps like these, you can always press and hold, and you'll either get a pop-up box or you'll get like some other thing that will show up telling you to save it to the photos or whatever.
Okay.
But that's the way to do it. And that's, again, one of those super simple things like markup. Nobody really realizes it's there, and then you're like, oh my God. So
Totally.
What else?
No, I was quite happy with it, but I mean, like most of us, if we're elementary or middle school, we've been trained on these things, right? If you go back to the Ken Holvig days, then you've really been trained for years and years.
And now it's just like, and I came in after him, but I've heard about him and I've heard about like sort of his background, and that's great. And what's sort of even better now in the sense of where his training is almost, it's a good foundation, but it's also a little bit like antiquated because like Keynote has been amped up so much in the last couple of years that it's like, it's great if you have that baseline, but you have to keep using these apps because you got to like, especially Apple and their apps, they update them so frequently. And when they update them with like features, you know? So you really have to keep using them and kind of keep in tune to it to really know where everything is and how best to use everything.
Yeah, when I first started, I would say PowerPoint was better than Keynote in terms of its ability to manipulate, and Keynote just outstripped it within a couple of years.
Yeah, totally.
The legs are insane.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why like you have to, and like you were saying, Christine, like you can whip up a Google Slides file because it's simple, but also you get used to it, and you know where the buttons are, and you know what the buttons do, and like your own workflow.
Right, and then this to get started, I ditched probably the first 6 that I started because I was like, oh, I want to try a different style.
And that's the thing. And sometimes, especially with kids, is it's like, you know,
one does
I'm having a little bit of network connectivity issues, I think. What were you saying, Christine, about Google? Or no, I know what you're saying. You were talking about like the options, and it was like 5 minutes to choose stuff.
Oh yeah, and there's so many that had so many great things in them. And then I started, it would look cute, and I like the visuals, but then I realized it had a feature like one of the portfolio ones. I'm like, it had a spot for client. I could have taken it out, but I'm like, maybe this doesn't fit what I'm doing just right. So I wanted to find one that fit better without having to make so many adjustments.
Right. And a lot of times what I'll say to teachers too with those things is like, if you're going to, like, you find one that's good for you and then remember your template, right? Because that's the one that you're going to use. And if you're going to let kids do it and sort of be somewhat free with it, which is totally cool to give them the flexibility to choose, you may want to like steer them and not just say you can use any layout you want or any theme you want, because they may spend hours just choosing one and get no work done. Like Christine will tell you, because Christine's in my building, so she's seen me teach the kids, that I'll usually tell the kids, you're starting with a blank white one, because we can always sort of change the theme later on. But what you want to do is you want to start with the blank white one, so you focus on the content and then think about spicing it up, but like focus on the text, focus on the words, the information, the images first before you start worrying about the actual theme. So, and we know how I've taught middle school in the past, so I know how middle school kids can be like super awesome and creative, but they could also be super distracted and go down these rabbit holes. So it could be the type of thing that if you don't say, just use a blank one to start, maybe you say you have your choice of this one or that one. Like you're only allowed to use these two. So choose. And then as time goes on and you sort of see how they work independently and make those smart choices about, like the little buttons and things, that then you could sort of open that up. But I definitely would not give any student like free reign the first time to be like, choose whatever you want, because they'll be there forever just focused on the look of it as opposed to the content.
I like to use Google Slides in a Google Doc. Like I'll take a screenshot of a more complex slide, because when you put images in a Google Doc, it's really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I like doing that. I don't know if that's crazy.
So, well, I would say there's two ways to make your life easier. One of which is, and Christine will laugh, is that I believe taking a screenshot is the worst thing in the world you could possibly do.
I said you'll always find out.
I always find out. I loathe it. There's like very rare instances that like you need it. In that situation, I would ask you, why are you using a Google Doc? Why not just make your thing in Google Slides and leave it there? Like all the tutorial things that I always make them in Google Slides because they're more flexible and because they're like better. So I actually hardly ever use Google Docs. I don't write anything. I'll write on a slide with images and the big things. Second to that is, instead of doing a screenshot, and one of the issues with screenshots is you may not get them exact and they may be off, is the easier thing to do is on your slide, just go to File, Download As, and download it as an image. You'll get a clean, high quality image that is just the slide as one single image. And it's the same as essentially doing a screenshot. It's the same number of keystrokes. It's the same whatever, but it's a cleaner way of doing it because you're having Google export that slide as an image as opposed to taking a picture of stuff on the screen. And that's the thing is like, people will say, oh, I took a screenshot of this image from Google. And it's like, why? Just take the picture from Google. Like what, I only like screenshots for things where you can't natively get a picture out. And that means, typing your name into a login screen box. There's no picture that exists of that. So you do a screenshot.
Well, when I made a lot of slideshows from Seesaw. And so I would, the students would upload their image and I would screenshot it and then I'd put it in a slideshow. I didn't know how to get
and we'll move into Seesaw in a minute, and we'll do and we'll show you that, because you can download the image. They can upload an image and you can save that image, just save the raw image to your screen or to your device. You can download it. You can save anything that gets uploaded, because then again, if you're doing a screenshot, then you got to crop it and like kind of tweak it and make it look good. Whereas it's best just to actually save the raw image, or like in Google Slides, just like I said, like if you do a lot of like tutorial based things, like maybe just don't use Google Docs, use Google Slides separately and just do different pages. Because the nice thing too is you can link things. So like you can have different sections. I'll show you guys. It's a little bit off book, but
I think it's the text. I feel like at Google Slides, I'm going to run out of room with the
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of. But what you do is this. So like what I've done is, so I have, this is our like Heathcote website, and we had all these e-learning resources, and one of the things I had was this. Not that, where I gotta find it. Oh no, e-learning, that's where it was. This is all of our e-learning stuff. So this slideshow was basically, I turned it into a book. And the reason why I did that was because even though some pages were heavier text than others, I was able to create a table of contents. So this slideshow has, which I know you can do in Google Docs, but like, I don't know, I just think it's a little bit longer, and that's more, Google Docs is text-based. But these days we do so many things that are text and visual with annotations and like drawing a circle around the button and putting an arrow to it, that I like to do this, where I then just will make this, you know, and have all the links and then just break it out. So like I use different sections to space it out. So any one of these links, when you click on it, we go to present mode, you'll see like if I wanted to click on, you know, Google Basics, it would just jump straight to this, and then I just start turning my pages. And this way I can more easily integrate like pictures and text and have it be wherever I want. Plus I could add these annotations on top, which is something I can't do. So this way, instead of making these annotations here and then saving this as an image to put it in Docs, that's like adding levels. This way I just have this book, this like ongoing book. And then what's really nice too is I can decide if I wanted to, because I made these links, and let's say I didn't like where it was, I could select all these and I could move them somewhere else in the timeline, and the links will still stay active. So I can just click these and I can pick them up and I can drag them somewhere else so they become slide 37 instead of 9, and it'll move and the link will still work. So that's why I find this to be a little bit, and I don't use Keynote because this is just so, I don't go super crazy. There's no animations or anything. I just like, it's simple and it's clean. But that way it's like turning the page of a book, you know, that I can sort of break it out, and it's a little bit larger too. So when we embed it like in a website, it's kind of like this. So instead of scrolling through a little window, they're just clicking like this. And then I find it to be, and maybe it's just me, that was my quarantine lamb chops. You know, you do this, it just gives it a little bit, you know, you're not dealing with like font size 12 or whatever. So that's why I do like things like that. But like I said, if you do want to do it the other way, all you have to do, like with this page, let's say, just do File, Download As. I gotta move our Zoom heads out of the way. Download, and just download it as like a JPEG or a PNG. Then that way this image will be a single slide as a native image, as opposed to a screenshot that's like a picture of the slide. And then you download it and then add it.
Wait, Chris, how did you get there? It's on your resource page, you said?
Yeah, it's on my resource page on the, well, I'm sorry, you're looking for this Heathcote online learning document?
Yeah, we're looking at the kindergarten.
So on the Heathcote Gateway, you got to go to the Heathcote Gateway first.
What's that?
Heathcote Gateway is our website for our building. It's where like the kids go. It's like our main entry point for all of our tech stuff. What I'll do is I'll toss it in the chat, so you have a link to it.
Does every school have that gateway, or just no?
No comment.
Okay.
But so yeah, sort of, kind of, theoretically. I suppose. Let me find the chat. Hold on, and I'll drop this in real quick. So you can see it's way at the bottom of the e-learning page is a link to that file. But what we'll do is, actually, I'll stop sharing for a second. So what else, Keynote, Google Slides wise? What other quirks, questions, difficulties? Everyone's good. Sweet. Yeah, and you know, if hopefully this stuff too, between those two, is you don't have to use both. You can if there's a purpose for it. Otherwise, find the one that suits you best, you know? And you may use one with the kids and one with for you to create content. Oh, let me show you how to get out of Keynote, because this is a bit of the rub on the iPad is in terms of sharing, it's a little bit clunkier. So now I've got my presentation and I'm ready to share it. Now in Google, it's really easy, right? You click the share button, you share it with people. It's super simple. Keynote is a little bit different. So for instance, in the top right-hand corner, you have the little circle with the person and the plus. So you can tap on that to share the presentation, but it's version dependent. So, and I'm not quite sure which the version is, and I'm not quite sure what version. I think that as of September, all the iPads will have the newest version, but I'm not sure they all have the current version, if that makes sense. Now, what you could also do is go to the three dots in the circle, and you can share it. And you get your normal share options. Now, a funny thing about Keynote is if I go to Drive, it'll take a second. It's loading, trying to process, and I'll go and I'll log in as me. And I'll select my folder and I'll stick it in that same folder. Yeah, I'll put in that practice file so that way you guys could all see it, and I'll save it there and I'll upload it. Now, I've put it in Drive. So if I go to Drive, it's right there and it's in blue. Now, that's because it's not a file type that Google recognizes. It's there, but if I click on it, it's going to load. But you notice it's loading a lot slower than the other one. Also, if you look closely at it, it looks a little bit different than it does in Keynote. Like the colors are a little bit off. And it doesn't necessarily show, like it's taking up like too much of the screen. Like Google has a little bit of a tough time sort of interpreting the file type, but it's stored there. Now this is Google Drive trying to watch a Keynote presentation inside of it, so it's not fantastic, but you could always do open in, and that is where you could then open it in Keynote or something like that, and then it'll open up natively. The other thing is if I come over to here and I come to this, and let me just reload. If you look at it on the website, see there's different like interpretations of what a Keynote file is. From a computer, it'll say .keynote, and Google won't be able to figure out what it is. Google will make you download it in order to view it. This, it'll load, but it's a preview. So it won't play like the animations. It won't, whoops, sorry, wrong one. It won't play, like it's just showing me this as a preview. It's not letting me do anything with it. I can't view it. See, like I can leave a comment on the file, but I can't actually view the file because it knows it's there and it sort of knows what it is, but it can't let me watch it. So you can open it in, so if we're all, like especially at middle school, if you're all up on the latest version of Keynote and everyone's iCloud accounts are all set, middle school will be easy because you can just share it with each other, collaborate in a more Google environment. What you can also do is, you know, if you are somebody, you can always do, like when you go to the share, one of these is probably going to be Schoology. So you'll be able to like export it to Schoology. And I don't, since we don't use Schoology, I don't know how Schoology interprets it. But since you're living in the iPad environment, it'll be easy to like see it labeled in a folder somewhere and then reopen it and re-download it or use it on the iPad because it's sort of this self-contained ecosystem. It's just a little bit weird, like for like us elementary folks, if we're like making it on our own iPad and then trying to like put it in Drive and get a kid to take it out of Drive to put it in their Keynote. It's a bit of a hinkier system. What you could also do, but you're going to lose some of the stuff, is you could also export. Now, you have options for exporting. PDF is essentially going to turn it into a multiple page document. So you're going to lose animations, you're going to lose audio, you're going to lose video. You won't lose links. PDFs will still maintain the links. PowerPoint will essentially convert it to a PowerPoint file. Issue becomes that sometimes the fonts aren't the same versus PowerPoint and Keynote, so like the colors will look different, things like that. It can get wonky. You could save it as a movie, where if you chose a movie, you can actually then set transition times on it. So it'll actually save it out. And if it's 5 seconds, per slide, 5 slides, you could have a 25-second little MOV file that you could then post to YouTube or something, or you have a whole bunch of slides, you can post it, and you notice it says go to next build. Builds are those animations. So if you have all of your animations flowing and you watch it as a Keynote like presentation and you're like, this is awesome, this is tight, this is great, you could have go to the next build after like 1 second and it like does its animation and then does the next one and the next one, and have it after the next slide, like every 10 seconds, let's say, you figure out that it's going to work. Then you can have this presentation that will work as a standalone presentation, but could be exported as a movie. Then you can put that on YouTube and put that into your teacher webpage or something. So you can have kind of best of both worlds. So there's that. Well, oops, somebody's talking, but not muted. There's an issue with the, Nancy, there's an issue with your mic again. Whatever you did last time, plugging something on. It's fine. I just.
Can you hear me now?
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's really weird. I have to go into system preferences and pick keyboard and then enable dictation. The tech guys at the high school helped me with it, but like it used to stay during a Zoom session, and now that's not the case.
So yeah, what were you saying?
So my question is, if you are making a movie out of that and you have embedded sound into it, you would need to animate that sound to make it automatic.
Yes, like to play. Yeah. So that would have a build where it would be like, on click or after previous start playing, and then when you can export the movie. So that would be a situation where what I would say is, if you're thinking about doing that and you have an idea in your head about, I want to have, a little bit of audio, video, whatever, do like 2 slides, put some audio, put some video, put your different elements on like 2 different slides and just export it as its own movie, just so you could see how it works and make sure the elements function inside the movie the way you would want them to as a presentation. Then you could go and create your longer form presentation, knowing, and you may have to cheat a little bit, right? Because it may be like, all right, I know that the sound goes in automatically after previous, but it sounded a little bit too fast in the movie. So I'll wait 2 seconds after builds, because that'll give it time to like ramp up or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Play around.
So I might not have paid enough attention when you were just talking, but if I export it to Google Drive and then I'm in my MacBook, can I then open it in MacBooks?
Keynote? Download it.
Yes. And then I could do it like as a screencast anyway and not have to worry about the movie part.
Yes.
It's probably way easier.
Yes. Yeah, you could definitely, that's the thing. Is like it can go to Drive, but then if you're on your Mac, you're not going to like run it out of Drive. You got to download it onto your hard drive. Then the quirk about that is then the versions are different. So then like if you make changes on your computer. However, depending on how the middle school is set up, because I know the middle school is trying to set up with like the iCloud accounts for everybody, where you would actually use the iCloud accounts. If the middle school's iCloud accounts are fully active and functioning, in theory, you could save that Keynote file to your district iCloud account, open up your laptop and open up Keynote, and instead of like open from the desktop, open from iCloud, you sign into your district iCloud account, and then it's the same file, because then it's the same. But I know in the past we've had some hinkiness with the student teacher iCloud accounts and syncing and all that. So yeah, ask Doug and Michael sort of about the feasibility of that.
Where we stand on it. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, because that would be the way to do it. That would be like super seamless. It's just I know it didn't work the way we thought it was going to work when we first tried to use it.
I know Doug wanted it, but I never heard afterwards if he got it. So
yeah, and there was an issue where we had to have like scarsdaleschools.k12.ny.us accounts because we had to manage the .org accounts, but Apple needed like there was this like merging of account issues. So yeah, we talked about it at the elementary level, and then we're like, yeah, no, we're fine. Like we're just gonna stay with Google because like we don't use the iPads enough at the upper grades. We're Chromebooks 3, 4, 5. So we're like we're just gonna stay. Yeah, we're currently we're K1, 2 iPads and then Chromebooks 3, 4, 5. And like second grade is like a transition year where they use Chromebooks and iPads. But with the middle school being so successful, we may rethink the model at the elementary level. We're not sure. Because this is the first year of the full 6, 7, 8. And this is like our first real year officially of like K5, here's your own device, take it home.
Okay.
So we're going to kind of see how they both work and see what the issue is. And it's possible theoretically down the line that we might have a more consistent thing. Yeah. We don't know. But yeah, so play around with that. So yeah, so you have export options. It just is a little bit more like you got to sort of take it off the iPad. Now at the elementary level, I might say, listen, if you have a strong group of first graders or second graders and they have their own iPads, maybe they just do them on their iPads and you let them do it and then worry about exporting later, or maybe they come into school and since we have those smart boards and you can AirPlay and you could cast your iPad to the smart board, you could have your K1 and 2 students make a Keynote file. And then when they come into the building, they just AirPlay it to the smart board and then show it on the smart board so they never actually have to turn it in. And that could be a way around dealing with the age and the sort of the assistance that would be needed for a first grader to like sign into Drive, turn it into Drive, all that stuff. So you sort of play around with the idea of how to use it. And what you might do, K1 and 2 teachers, like don't have the kids use it yet. You use it for yourself and see, is it worth it? How cool is it? How not cool is it? Like what, the benefit to Keynote at the elementary level is that they don't need to sign into Google to use it. So that takes an element of technical assistance out. Flip side to that is it adds a layer of complexity for turning it in. Because at the elementary level, we're so tied to Google in terms of submission that you kind of got to weigh those two sort of pros and cons. Cool. All right. Now,
are you teaching the students? Are they doing like a technology course with you, or are the teachers teaching the students how to do everything on the computer?
So the way we work at Heathcote is I do it, and I push into classes all the time, and I'll teach them the basics of the tech of this stuff, and then I'll work with the teachers on curriculum connected components of like, here's how we're going to weave this in. So like whenever I work with classes, everything will be based on like 4 or 5 sessions, and we'll do like a unit and a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll weave sort of the technical components in throughout the lesson or throughout the series of lessons. This year, since it's a little bit different, we're going to be scheduled as K and 1 prep teachers. So we're going to have, like 2 classes a day where we're sort of dedicated. We're like a prep for those teachers. So I'll be teaching them, I'll be focusing a lot on the tech for at least like September, October. But then I'm still going to talk to the classroom teachers about like sort of what from a curriculum standpoint do they want me to weave in, because I always want the tech to be purposeful and not just be about me. Like I want them to be able to go back to the classroom teacher, and which is why the program is so great, because usually the classroom teacher's in the room with me while I'm teaching it, so the teacher hears the process and understands the purpose, and we sort of weave it in naturally. So sort of long answer to a short question, but like yes in various.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy about that. I hope that the art teacher or the specialist teachers can have access to your teaching it, because I don't have a device that the students have. And the art teachers, we were all saying how we have 30% of the kids handing in their work because they just couldn't figure it out. And, you know, a parent didn't know how to take a picture with an iPad and post it. And, you know, it was a big mess. So
yeah. And so like in the past, I've done a little bit of PD with like Erin, our art teacher, and Catherine, our music teacher, where like I'll help them out so that they know how to use the iPads, or sometimes they would actually book me for the time that they had the kids. So even though the kid was coming to art and music, they would actually schedule my lab slot. So I would be teaching during their time, but so that way we'd be teaching their content, but I'd be doing the tech facilitation. I think I only did it once with Erin. I've done it a lot with our music teacher, Catherine, because teach them GarageBand, teach them, you know, different sort of music apps and stuff. And so we do a lot of that together. But yeah, I mean, we try to get as much integration and seamless integration as possible. But all right. So what we're going to do now is, because of the time and stuff, I don't want to start Seesaw now. We're going to start Seesaw first thing in the morning, because that's going to be a little bit more, because there's sort of more going on in that, because there's like the teacher and the student perspective. What we'll do now is I'll show you Notability. Now, Notability, Jen, is going to be sort of the iPad equivalent-esque of Cami. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough. So I will share my screen. So what Notability is, and the middle school's been using it. I don't know, like, Nancy, how familiar you are with it.
It was one of those things, I'll burn that bridge when I come to it.
So let's light it on fire, man. We're here now.
Same here. I mean, if you didn't have a device that you could do it with, you know, we didn't really pay much attention.
Yeah. So here we go, Nancy, Janie. Let's burn this bridge, man. We're here.
No, I've actually heard it's really good. The kids didn't have it, so it was like, I will come to that mountain some other time.
And then for so actually, I'll let this run for a second. What's cool is whenever there's updates, like these apps will see this, right? So whenever you do things, you can go through and follow directions. Notability, and this can actually also work for like second grade, who were using their Google Drives last year, and they were using a Chrome extension called Cami to annotate PDFs. You can't really, there's no PDF annotation app by default on the iPad, the way there are like Chrome extensions. Excuse me. Notability allows some of that feature, but it allows you to do other things as well, like create notebooks and create different notes within notebooks. So it's also a bit of an organizational tool. Think of it sort of like Drive, in that you can create different, things. So I'll add, I'm going to create a subject, and we'll call it STI. Was it 5437? Right. So that's my new subject. So I'm in here. I now have nothing. So gives you directions, and this is nice. I always tell the kids, like, don't just click away or ask me. Like, there's words on the page. Read the words on the page. But what I can do is I can click that pencil, creates a new note. It'll always start with the day and time that it's created, which is really useful, because like it'll help the kids remember, like, oh, I did that on whatever day. Like that was my PM session of something. But you could also rename it. So like if I didn't want that, because it says note August 24th, but then notice right below it is also the timestamp. So I'll call it like STI, demo. Keeps the timestamp there, but now it's my new note. So now what I can do is down here, like I have my text, right? I can draw out a text box. There's my text box, and I can say, this is text. And then not what I wanted. I'm going to click on the finger, because then I can click on the finger and I can select. Why is it not doing it? I should be able to move around. I'll come back to that in a second. Pencil, right? You can use, right? You can do that. Eraser, so you can actually take notes and then, handwrite. You can highlight things. You can also record, which is really nice. So you can actually record and linking it with your note, meaning that the audio will track based on what you typed while you're recording or what you were drawing while you're recording, things like that. So it's great for keeping that self-contained. What's also cool is, and I have this horrible note right now, is that I can then also add media. So I can add in photos. And you'll notice it gives me other things, not just all photos. I have Instagram, I have Seesaw, so you can add in things from Seesaw. But let's say I take this one and I insert my one photo, I can move it around. I can then also double tap on that pencil to change my colors and my line thickness. And if I wanted to, I can then annotate right on top of that photo. I could take this, I could take a picture. The document thing is nice. Now, Jen, this could be a place where if you're talking about doing a document where you might want to, have the kids annotate something. Let's see. And it's funny. I'm like, oh, let me show an example. But I'm like, wait, I don't have any actual written papers anywhere. So here we go. I'll do this. This is an old list of stuff. I just want to make sure there's okay. So here we go. So let's say I'm going to document this. So this is like handwriting on a piece of paper. Then what I can do is I can actually adjust with these corners and I can make sure that I'm just like taking what I want. And I'll keep that scan. Now I can insert this as an image or a PDF. Now, if I bring it in as a PDF, takes a second. Doop, doop, doop. And there it's on the second page. And I still have a blank page. So it puts that PDF as its own page. Now I can actually take a highlighter and I can highlight over top of it. And you notice it's sideways because that's how I took the picture. What you can do is if it was an image, you'd be able to rotate it, but since it's a PDF, you can't. But because you can bring in PDFs, you can annotate on top of PDFs and make changes to it.
When you bring in a PDF, say I bring in a 6-page PDF, does it do it just all as one file?
Yes, let me get from, I haven't done that in a while. In this one, I think you can actually take this and you used to be able to rotate it. But you can always delete the page. There was, let me jump out. Let me go in here to Drive and let me get a PDF. I'll even use my Cami PDF practice folder.
What's Cami?
Cami is a Chrome extension for like Chrome browser where you can open up a PDF in the Chrome browser and use Cami to annotate it.
Got it.
So here, I'll take this one. This is the document. So I used Cami in a web browser to do that, to mess with it. So well, all right. I'll do the math workbook. So open in Notability. Now I'm going to add this to my STI demo because I want it to be in there. Now, if you were starting with this, you could tell the kids, listen, you're going to open it in Notability. I shared it with you in Drive, open it in Notability, create a new note or add it, like whatever you want to say. But I'm going to add it to the STI demo, import it. Now this is a JPEG, so put that in there as a JPEG. But let's do this. Let's come back to this one and same deal. Now this is, let me find one that's multi-page. Hold on. Okay, Cami PDF demo. this is a multi-page PDF. Yep. 41 pages. So this may break the app because it's a 41-page import. But I'll add it, but we'll see. So now pages down there at the bottom, you can say all pages, right? Or you can pick and choose and only do some, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect all, but we'll do 3 of them. I'll do 5. We'll do those pages. Okay. And then we'll go back. So I've selected them. So I go back. It says custom on pages. So I know which ones I did. So I'm going to import that. I'm going to say done. Now it leaves me in here. So now what I got to do is I got to go back to Notability. And it's going to now, it takes a second. I now have more pages. And it's loading. They will load, or they should load. I don't know why they haven't yet. But you see how it imports them as individual pages? I know they're blank right now. Oops, not what I wanted. But
Chris, would I be able to see that on the Hapara? Like, how would I view it?
No, so then, no, this is just in here. So then what they would have to do is they would edit it in Cami, and then they would use this send to, and they would send it back to Google Drive. So what you would do is, Jen, you would say, all right, like, I'm going to stick the math workbook in your math folder. I want you to open it in Notability, make your edits to it, then use the send to button and send it back to Google Drive. And if you go back to Google Drive with it, it'll ask you what folder you want to save it in. And instead of being the Cami folder or whatever, you say, put it in your math folder. And you could always change this and export it, pick the folder you want. And if you notice, see, I have all my regular folders. It'll say a format PDF. So you can export this thing that has hand drawings in it, annotations, basically back as a PDF, but now it's an annotated PDF. So that would be the way to do that. So now here's what we're going to say for the rest of the day is play around with Notability, but I want you to make 2 different files in Notability. And or 2 different like notes. One note, make it be just trying to bring a PDF in, annotate a PDF. You know, you can, if you don't have, like if you have a math workbook, bring that in. If you have, it doesn't matter if it's a Sears catalog or the PDF file if you're dishwasher, bring it in. See what it's like to highlight on the text, right? Add other things to the text. Using it strictly as like a PDF annotation tool, like a text-based annotation tool. Second note.
Wait, Chris, one question about that. Do they have the ability to write in text in the margins, or does it have to be by hand?
Text box, the T.
So the text box is a Notability thing. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The second note would be not a PDF. Use the multimedia features. Record some voiceover, put a picture in, annotate the picture. Use some of those more creative features to see that you can use it just for straight sort of PDF annotation, but you could also use it to create a more interactive whiteboard type of situation. Because one of the things you can do, you know, like if you have it, you could, you know, export it and open it up in, you know, Seesaw, Note, or whatever. You can push these things out to other places. So it doesn't just have to be text-based or notebook. You can have the videos, or not the videos, the audio. You know, you could bring in this stuff from like a GIF. You could bring in those stickies. You can bring in those other things under the plus button. So play around with those. So 2 notes. One is basically straight PDF annotation with highlight text, annotate text, put text boxes in the margins. Another note that's a little bit more creative and multimedia. Cool. And then we will see everyone back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on the same Zoom link. And we'll take a look at those notes, and then we'll jump into Seesaw. And then we'll try, depending on questions and time, we'll also do hopefully a little book creator, possibly a little explain everything. We'll see where we're at, because I want to make sure that we end the day tomorrow knowing that people have a few core things that will get them going for September. Cool.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, Chris.